Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Lunenburg Select Board. Today is Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live over the Lunenburg Public Access channel, on Facebook Live, on the Public Access Facebook page, and will be uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. I'd like to note that tonight we are joined remotely by Selectman Renee Imke, and Selectman Susan Nizzolo is conducting military training that's running late this evening and will be unable to attend. We're going to start today with public comment from the board and the public. However, I know that there's a couple things on the agenda tonight, which is likely has some public interest. Specifically, there may be public comments related to public access's concerns regarding HR 3557, and there may be some concerns as related to the Open Space Committee's request. As such, we will have a public comment period following the presentation from PAC, and we will also have a public comment period following the presentation from Open Space. I will ask that public comments related to those two topics be conducted at those times and not during the general public comment period that we're about to begin. Do we have any public comments this evening from the board?
None.
I have none.
All right. And do we have any public comments from the public this evening? All right. Any announcements tonight?
None.
Okay, so before we go to communications from other boards, we are going to go a little out of order tonight with interviews, appointments, reappointments, and resignations. This is with regard to ratification and request to ratify the town manager's appointment of the finance director and town accountant. This is a dual appointment and ratification by the select board and town manager. So I'll turn to the town manager for her presentation on this.
Okay. So tonight, the board is aware, I'm asking the board to ratify the appointment of the finance director and / town accountant. It's a dual position, as the chairman said. So we began advertising for this position in April, and since then, we have received a total of 22 applications. We requested interviews with 11 of those candidates since May 4th. One accepted an interview and then withdrew. 2 people were contacted with no response back. And we interviewed 8 people, including Ezekiel, who I'm asking the board to ratify tonight. Our process was that the assistant town manager and I conducted the preliminary interview, and if the interview went well, we would recommend a second interview that also included a member of the select board and our interim finance director, Karen Brochu. The finance Julie, the assistant town manager, and I interviewed Ezekiel Ayala on November 30th, and a second interview that included Selectman Alonso and Karen Brochu was held on December 19th. At both interviews, Ezekiel expressed a desire to work in local government. Ezekiel comes with over 20 years of progressive executive, administrative, and financial management experience within the realm of higher education, state government, and nonprofit organizations. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration with a concentration in accounting and a Master's of Science in Management with a concentration in leadership. He is currently the Chief Financial Officer Controller for the Central Mass Housing Alliance, and prior to that was the Chief Fiscal Officer for the Massachusetts District Attorneys Association. He has also worked for the Operational Services Division as their Finance and Budget Supervisor, the Payroll Director at Worcester State University, the Budget Director at Worcester County Sheriff's Office, and Accountant Level 3 of the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance. Of the many things that stood out, one was Ezekiel's interest and excitement to give back to the community that he would be working in. Ezekiel served on his community's Finance Committee, Capital Budget Committee, and the Wachusett Regional Schools Audit Advisory Board. His leadership and management experience, combined with his fiscal background, positive references, and desire to serve the community, makes him an excellent candidate for this position. We are excited to bring Ezekiel on board, pending the board's ratification. And Mr. Ayala is here tonight via Zoom, if you want to recognize or ask him questions.
Of course. Thank you, Heather, for that presentation. I do want to recognize Ezekiel, what is it, Ayala? Ezekiel will tell me how to say it.
Ayala.
Ayala. Thank you, Mr. Ayala. And so I want to recognize Ezekiel. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a brief presentation, then I'll open to the board for any questions or comments that the board may have.
Yes, so you're gonna have to excuse my voice, I do have the flu. This is why I'm calling you remote. But yeah, so like I mentioned previously, I have over 20 years of financial experience, whether it's several agencies from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's also working currently from nonprofits, Central Massachusetts Housing Alliance. I dedicated my career to public service, and I currently also serve on the Finances Committee and the Capital Budget Committee for the town of Sterling, where I live. I think it's very important to give back to the community and just, help out wherever we can. And hopefully I can bring my experience, background, and, help out the town of Lunenburg as best as I can.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ayala, for that. And, I want to turn to the board for any questions the board may have. Again, I want to note that Mr. Alonso was part of the interview process, which is always exciting to have, given that, again, this is a dual position that we appoint half of this and we ratify the other half. I'm going to turn to Mr. Alonso first for any comments or questions you may have.
I'll hold off my comments to see if any of my colleagues have questions first.
Okay.
Since I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Ayala at the interview.
Thank you. Selectman Imke.
I have no questions or comments at this time.
All right.
I have none at the moment either, but look forward to Mr. Alonso's thoughts as well.
All right. I don't really have any questions either, but I do want to thank you, Mr. Ezekiel Ayala, for applying for the position. We did have the opportunity to look over your resume. I think that any questions that we had the opportunity to present them to the town manager in advance. I think that this is obviously a critical role for our town, and I know that one of the things that the town manager and this board has been looking for is someone that is able to blend well with our existing staff, someone who's able to take our department as it exists, get up to speed, and look for new opportunities and challenges to meet the growing needs of our community. Based on the feedback that we received, it seems as if you're an excellent candidate for that, and so I don't have any hesitation this evening, and so I will turn back over to Mr. Alonso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want a few shout outs. First of all, as the town manager said, there were 22 candidates, and this position has not been vacant for a short period of time. And I know everybody, including this board, was wondering when we would be able to fill it, but I applaud her and her staff in weeding through the ones that did not fit the town. Obviously, the 21 before Mr. Ayala did not fit the town, and it takes a lot of patience, a lot of courage to go through that, because all the workload that was, left to do because of the vacancy in this position went to the town manager and the remaining staff in the finance department. So I applaud them for waiting for the right candidate. In speaking in the second interview with Mr. Ayala, I think his experience speaks for itself. Although this position, the title and the responsibilities will be new to him, many of the tasks and many of the skills needed are overlapped with what he has already done, and he certainly showed excellent knowledge in those fields. His ability and desire to want to work in a municipality and serve back is certainly commendable, and is shown by his other career choices, which have all been in the public sector. So I really could not exercise more excitement about him coming aboard. I think he'll be an excellent fit. Obviously, there'll be a honeymoon period that he gets used to everything, but from his past experiences and past employment, I know he will do that very well, and I look forward to him starting soon.
All right, and we've been very fortunate to have Karen Brochu remain on as a consultant. And so just to the town manager, I know that our expectations that there's going to be a form of a right seat, left seat ride that's going to go on for a certain period of time, but what is kind of your calculation on that at this point?
There is no defined term, but Karen has offered to stay on and mentor Mr. Ayala.
Excellent.
So we're very grateful to her for these past 7 months plus, and for her willingness to do this continuing forward.
Excellent. And so be function as a resource, for the course of the year, it sounds, as things are needed, that's excellent. Do we have any remaining questions from either Selectman Imke or Selectman Franco?
I have none.
I have none.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may make the motion.
If you can add in appoint and ratify the appointment.
I move that we ratify the town manager's appointment of the finance director, and we appoint Ezekiel Ayala as the town accountant under the authority of the select board for the positions as stated, finance director and town accountant.
Second. All right, any other discussion on this? This would be a roll call vote. Selectman Imke.
Aye.
Selectman Alonso.
Aye.
Selectman Franco.
Aye.
And an aye for myself. Congratulations, Mr. Ezekiel Ayala. And when is the expected start date?
I believe it is February 5th. Is that right, Ezekiel?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
And there's a secondary vote as well that's needed.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. Now, we have had the opportunity as well to review the contract related to this previously, and so I will entertain a motion related to the approval of the contract.
I move that we approve the contract for Mr. Ayala in his position as finance director and town accountant.
Second.
Any additional discussion? This will be a roll call vote. Selectman Imke.
Aye.
Selectman Alonso.
Aye.
Selectman Franco.
Aye.
And an aye for myself. That is approved. All right, thank you, and we welcome you on board and look forward to meeting you in person when the weather's a bit better and when you're not under the weather. So thanks for being with us tonight, and we definitely look forward to meeting you in February.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Communications from other boards. We received a request from PAC related to HR 3557, American Broadband Deployment Act of 2023, and this is currently at the State House level. I'm going to turn over to Mr. Walker, who chairs the PAC, for a presentation related to this, and if the town manager wouldn't mind sharing the presentation that was provided in advance on the screen. Mr. Walker.
Oh, yeah, I was just waiting for, oh, there it is, thank you. Good evening, thank you for this opportunity. We were advised by Mass Access that there's a bill, HR 3557, in the United States Congress that aims to streamline federal, state, and local permitting and expedite the deployment of communications facilities. It was introduced by Buddy Carter, who's a Republican from Georgia. There are 11 co-sponsors. The bill has been opposed by some groups that advocate for local control rather than federal control over wireless technology deployment, and they argue that the bill would infringe on local government's authority and property rights and favor cable, wireless, and telecommunication providers. The bill has not yet been passed. The consequences of it, I've tried to put these together. I don't read legalese, and a lot of this is written in strange language. So I've tried to put this into a language that we can all understand, and as best I can present it so we understand consequences of this. So one is that it mandates all wireless siting decisions to be deemed granted. This phrase is going to keep coming up. This means that if the local authorities don't act fast enough and under particular circumstances, then the result is whatever's being asked for is deemed granted. And this gives us all kinds of interesting problems. It sets timelines that are impossible to meet. It requires a local government, in the event we denied a request, to draft, publish and deliver to an applicant on the same day that the local governing body hears and votes on the application, a written denial decision, which is essentially impossible. It also empowers providers to install facilities where they choose, regardless of local zoning. So if we had an area of particular architectural interest and they wanted to put an antenna up there of some kind, it seems that this allows them to do it under certain circumstances. May I have the next slide, please? These are the consequences. I won't go through all of them. You can see what's there, but the ones that really concern me are the red ones on the screen here, which it eliminates cable franchise renewals. So we have a cable franchise with Comcast, which is the only cable provider. It provides for a franchise fee which runs approximately $200,000 a year. And that's the money that we use to run the studio, pay the staff, and provide all the services that PAC's been providing, more particularly during COVID, but continuing now with such things as, well, broadcasting this meeting. It also affirmatively grants cable operators the right to provide non-cable services, while prohibiting localities from imposing any fees on cable operators' revenue for non-cable services. By those, we presume that they are talking primarily of internet type services. If I can give you some notes on this, local governments are just as eager for their residents to have access to high quality broadband service as broadband services and cable providers are to deploy it. So we're putting this in the wrong place. Towns or cities must call on Congress to treat local governments as partners in the effort to close the so-called digital divide, not enemies. Congress and federal agencies must respect local processes, which are best managed at the level of the government closest and most responsive to the people. And these are the very people sitting at the table in front of you. So we need to be very careful with that. If I could have the next slide, please. The town leaders are requested to call or write to our members of Congress and urge them to oppose H.R. 3557. The impacts are potentially significant on the town. The Select Board is the licensee for the cable franchise contract, which means this isn't something PAC could do, it's something the town needs to authorize. And my favorite statement of all of these, the elimination of funding for PAC would be fatal. They absolutely rely on the franchise fee to run PAC, run PEG, run the 3 channels that we now have with programming, and in particular broadcast of government meetings. The next 2 slides, which we don't need, are there for the record, so they show the co-sponsors, and by state, only one of which, New York, is even slightly close to us. And the following slide has some links to a short YouTube presentation that was made by somebody in New Jersey, and a couple of congressional websites that you can go to if you wish to. So at this time, I would entertain questions or whatever you like.
All right, thank you, Mr. Walker. Do we have any questions related to this from the board, from Mr. Walker? I'll start, yep.
I have one. Mr. Walker, can you tell me when the current license franchise contract is up?
I think we should ask the chair of the Cable Advisory Committee on that, but I believe it was 2017 to 10 years.
Thank you. I like the understated joke that I was the chair of the Cable Advisory Committee, so.
I didn't say that.
No, you didn't, but I am letting everybody in on the inside joke, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, does the board have any other questions related to this request?
Not at the moment.
Comments?
Not at the moment, although some time to digest would be appreciated. I definitely thank you for the presentation, and I think I understand the major concerns. I just want to see how it fits more in context. Were we planning on actually taking any kind of action on this evening, or?
Yes. My expectation tonight leading this, or having this conversation, was that we would hear the presentation from Mr. Walker, and if we are so inclined to agree with the request, that we'll ask the town manager or Elaine to draft correspondence to our local delegation, asking for their opposition to it, and then also to congressional delegation, asking for their lack of support for it, for us to discuss at our next meeting.
Mr. Chair.
Yes?
So two things. First of all, I mean, we can certainly send it to our local delegation. I assume you mean state, but this is not,
Correct.
this is not a state issue. This is a federal issue. So
Yes.
certainly Representative Trahan would be our representative, but we should send it to everybody in the state at least. I will say that this is not the first time this kind of legislation has come up. I don't know if this is identical, but it's certainly at least enough of an overlap in the past, and this would do exactly what Mr. Walker said. I mean, it would gut PAC, it would remove essentially not only local approval for franchise rights that have existed since cable TV has existed, but it would actually remove some of the zoning regulations, so it actually becomes a zoning issue as well. And none of this, I'm sure everybody out there who's listening, both in the audience and online or on TV, are perfectly happy with their internet service providers, who are the very same people that these laws apply to, and all sarcasm was intended, that this does not help anybody as a user. This just helps the huge corporations, the Comcast, the Verizons, and everybody who provides these services. None of this has been at all detrimental to them, and has not even been it. Even the costs, while I don't say they're not zero, certainly, but and when you compare what they're asked to do with the size of the companies, it really is a rounding error to them, and they just don't want to be bothered, and they're looking to the federal government to remove states and local abilities to oversee what they're doing. And certainly, as one member, not only of the Cable Advisory Board, but of this board, I certainly am for authorizing the chair to sign a letter on our behalf opposing this, and we'll send that letter to all our legislators, I'm sorry.
All right. I mean, I was already inclined in that direction, but I am going to defer as additional evidence and strength. You're definitely superior to my knowledge of all of this, because I know you have a longer history with it. Secondly, just in general terms, at a 10,000-foot view, it seems to violate two core principles of which I am an actual fan and not a faux fan, and that is small central government and local control. It seems to violate both of those. So, so I am comfortable with this.
All right. And any comments, Selectman Imke?
No, I agree with comments already stated and would support a letter.
Okay. So, I want to second all the comments made by Selectman Alonso. I will add additionally, I don't question Congress's ability to regulate interstate commerce. That's pretty exclusively their purview. But as Mr. Franco stated, when it steps into our realm, which is zoning, which is, how local things function, then the understanding that, a lot of people rely on PAC. I mean, just think about the meeting tonight. I mean, PAC is being broadcast to many people's homes right now. Through PAC, we're able to see this in the room. PAC is really monitoring and assisting with the Zoom function for tonight. They help out with the promotion there, and all these things are funded through people who have cable. That there's a fee in the cable bill that goes towards PAC that helps fund all this, and that what's being proposed through this legislation is eliminating that funding source, which then eliminates the ability to, force the corporations to help fund access for local government. And that access doesn't go away, so who picks up the tab? The tab gets picked up by the general coffers of the taxpayers. And so, it is It is something I strongly would not support, so if there is no objection, I'll ask the town manager to prepare a letter to our state delegation asking for their opposition to, for this, so that way they can communicate that as well to Representative Trahan and to our senators, and also to ask for a letter to be prepared for both our senators and also to our representative in Congress. All right, so without opposition, I'll ask the town manager to pursue that.
Do you need a vote?
Votes never hurt, as
That's
Heather
what
always
I
says.
was
I move
saying.
that we authorize the chair to sign a letter in opposition to HR 3557 and to send that to our state delegation and our U.S. representative in Congress and U.S. senators from
I'll
Massachusetts.
second that.
All right, before we have a vote, though, I want to pause. I probably should have asked for the public comment prior to getting to the vote, but any member of the public want to speak in favor of HR 3557, how it will benefit our community? Anyone want to speak against it as a public comment? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll take a roll call vote. Selectman Imke?
Aye.
Selectman Alonso?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
And an aye for myself. All right, thank you, Mr. Walker, for bringing this to our attention. Thank you for the quick turnaround. I know that you communicated with us toward the end of last week, and I moved pretty quickly to get this on the agenda for tonight. So thank you for the quick turnaround.
I appreciate your responsiveness, and if I can be any help with any part of the letter, just get in touch with me. You do know where to find me.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to go to our appointment we're a little late for, 7:10. So this is a meeting with the Open Space Committee related to their request or recommendation for us to transfer 51 Parmenter Road, parcel 136-0006, and 0 Shirley Reservoir Road, Lake, which is parcel 137-0012, to the Parks Commission. So just to outline this discussion, we will hear the presentation from the Parks Commissioners, from Open Space Committee. We will hear any support from the Parks Commissioners or comments from the Park Commissioners. We will have, the Select Board will have the opportunity to ask any immediate questions before opining. We will then go to the public for any comments from the public related to the presentation that they hear, any comments that they may have, any questions that they may have. We will have that. The board will then engage in conversation, and we will not take a vote on this evening. We will schedule the vote for the first meeting of February. So I'm not sure who's speaking on behalf of Open Space tonight. Please.
Good evening. Okay.
Yes, so please come to the microphone and state your name and address.
Sure. My name is Mike Toohill. I live at 41 Stone Fence Road in Lunenburg, and I'm the chair of the Open Space Ad Hoc Committee.
Excellent.
As part of our duties as the Ad Hoc Committee, we've been looking at a lot of parcels throughout town to see how they're being held and whether or not maybe it made sense to request that the Board of Selectmen consider transferring control to a different entity based on those parcels. These two parcels in particular came to our attention a couple years ago. They're both parcels on Lake Shirley. The 0 Shirley Reservoir Lake parcel, which is on Reservoir Road and Fire Road 12, is a parcel that's on an area also called Stump Cove. And that area is used for kayak launching, canoe launching right now. People park along Reservoir Road and put into Stump Cove in order to be able to go into the cove and go into the lake. Parmenter Road is not being used for that purpose right now. It's a parcel that sits in the intersection near 3 roads, a much smaller parcel, but it has access, direct access to the lake as well. So both of these parcels are town-owned parcels that are on the lake, and the Open Space Committee was made recommendation to the Board of Selectmen that you consider, through town meeting obviously, transferring control of these parcels to the Parks and Rec Committee.
Okay. I do want to turn to anyone from Parks, the Parks Commissioners, who may want to speak to this or against this, any comments, thoughts, and if we can get some background on how we've arrived at this point, that would be helpful as well.
Good evening, Anna Lockwood. I'm the Chair of the Parks Commission, and we actually have our whole board here. So I did post a meeting, so if it's okay, I would like to open the meeting officially. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised this meeting has been recorded. It will be broadcast live over Lunenburg Public Access channel on Facebook Live and Public Access Facebook page. And we uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of this discussion. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. And we have a member who's on Zoom, so I'm going to have to do a roll call. So Chris Sullivan? Here. Colleen? Here. Anita? Here. And Karen Menard on Zoom? Here. All right, thank you.
I want to acknowledge the time is 7:31. Your meeting's in order.
Thank you very much. So, so we've been part of the, Parks Commission's part of the Open Space Committee, and this has been a discussion that, going back through the minutes, we've been discussing since 2020. There was a lot of research done by two previous board members. One was Paula Bertrand, another one was Bob Pease. And at the beginning, they were entertaining about 6 different options, parcels, and we narrowed down to these 2 parcels. I'm going to make, a couple highlights. So the Stump Cove was a parcel that was given to town in the late 80s. I don't have the exact date, when the dam for the Shirley Lake was failing, and the state had to intervene. And the agreement with the state was the state would fund that with taxpayer money if the town was given public access. And that's where that lot, the Stump Cove, came to be purchased by the town. And that lot, I don't know how many attempts has been since the late 80s to now, but when Paula Bertrand started investigating that lot, it was not clear that the title could be cleared. And since then, Mike Tuhill has had many meetings with town council, and we have paid for a light title search, and Mike Tuhill has, with town council believes that this title can be cleared. So far, we don't have this title cleared. But this is a property that was given to us in lieu of, as part of the agreement of having the dam rebuilt. The Parmenter Road parcel is an interesting one. It's it's sort of a corner lot in 3 pieces, and it's been currently used. When you look at, I was just there Saturday. There is a shed on the property, on town property. There is a trailer in town property. There are 3 kayaks in town property, and I documented all that with pictures. And there is definitely marks and trails that someone is using to access, I'm assuming, the lake. So the goal on this parcel is there are a couple things with this parcel is that it's been used, it's not in a safe way, and it's also not very environmentally friendly, if you will. The access, the way that it's been used, it causes erosion, which then runs straight into the lake. So the idea with the Parmenter Road parcel, these plans have been just talked about possibilities, is to formalize the access. It's not a big parcel, so whatever formalizing to existing, and make sure that whatever access we have is done properly. And, and that it is being used by all the residents. And with the Stump Cove, it's similar. People are using, but it's not very safe. Parking is not well defined. People park on the side of the road. Reservoir Road is not an easy road to park and get out. And we do believe that we can improve that area. It's actually a big lot, the way it is described, and one that maybe we can do some parking, create a small picnic area, and explore from there. But the main thing about this request, which I think is important to realize, is that these are all ideas. All we've been talking about is what are the possibilities for these 2 parcels. And we do believe that we can create a more formal access to town residents to Lake Shirley. And what we want to do by putting these 2 parcels under the current control of the Parks Commission is start this process of formalizing what should we do? You know, is it a boat ramp? Is it a dock? Is it just nothing? Is it just roll your kayak? And we actually don't have the answer to that, but we know it's one of these things should be possible. And we do feel like, we can talk about timing, why now? Well, first of all, I think we've been past due on giving the town access to Lake Shirley for about 35 years. And the second thing is we have had a group of people that have been working on this for several years now, which we actually have a turnover in the Open Space Committee. 2 of these members that worked on this, they're no longer with the committee because they're no longer serving. And some of this knowledge and information that we have gained and put work into it might disappear as we cycle through members. So I think it's the right time, taking how much work has been done to move these parcels to the care and control of the Parks Commission. And when we start the process of what we are going to do with these parcels, how are we going to develop, then we do a process similar to what we have done with Marshall Park, which is have meetings, put questionnaires out there, research, and figure out a plan. But right now, there's not a plan, but we also don't have a formal way to go about developing that. So those are my points, and if anybody have any questions for Mike or
I usually like to go last, but I have a clarifying question that
Sure.
I think the rest of the board probably has as well. So, I mean, the land is already under the care and custody of the select board, and we allow public access to all of our property. So the public already has access to this land. They already can launch a boat from there if they want to. So, I mean, what's the change? I mean, it's already accessible to the public, it's just probably not communicated, it's not advertised, but I mean, it's already public property that they can already use. So what is the benefit of, we could, as a select board, better the property or move to better it, so that way it's more accessible. So why transfer the property to the Parks Commission? I'm assuming you're going to say you guys are better equipped, because you probably are. But why transfer to the parks to do what's already, the public can already do?
Well, I think you answered. We are better equipped. Under the charter, Tulare Parks is a function of the Parks Commission, but that's our full-time job, and it's one that we can do better. These 2 parcels have been under your care and control for 35 years, and you haven't done any of these things. So we are Parks Commission cannot start this process if it's not under our care and control. So unless you're gonna, say, yes, let's do it, and start exploring that. But, it's not an easy project, I can tell you, just having done Marshall Park. It's really, it's a kind of a specialized activity that you have. But, and so there is this delay of 35 years that we have had on the Stump Cove property, and there is no movement, and it's not a safe environment, and people are accessing, people wanted to do that. So we're just looking to have, by being under the care and control parks, we can formally start this process and having the conversations and do something as we are trying to do in Marshall.
Okay, I'm going to turn to the rest of the board for any questions the board has. Again, we're going to limit our opinions at this point until after we hear public comments. But any questions, I'll start with Selectman Imke if she has any, then we'll go to the members in the room with us.
Yeah, I have one question just to make sure I heard it correctly. The Stump Cove, the title has not cleared yet, did I hear that right?
You know more about that.
So the Stump Cove parcel was part of a tax taking in 1957. And in 1974, the property was foreclosed on. We did have a title search done, and the title examiner, because the changes that occurred at the dam, the changes that occurred with the parcels that abut the lake boundaries changed, and the original taking in 1957 was against a bunch of parcels that were owned by a particular family. So it's very hard for the tax title specialist to go in and say, this particular piece of land shows up in that deed, because all the boundaries have changed.
Okay, and is that due to the lake itself changing?
It's in part due to the lake changing, and it's in part due to the fact that when the taking took place in 1957, and then in 1974 was foreclosed on, it wasn't, the deed wasn't recorded with the parcels, whether they're underwater or not. The deed wasn't recorded completely.
All right, Selectman Imke?
Okay, and then the other question I have is, have you talked to any of the abutters or residents in the area, or Lake Shirley residents at all?
Yes, we've had a number of ad hoc committee meetings where we've had residents come to the meetings. We had one meeting across the street in the Memorial Building where we had a lot of residents come in talking about what, they thought we should and shouldn't be doing with the parcels, and we tried to make it clear the ad hoc committee is not proposing to do anything with the parcels themselves. That's why we're recommending that it get turned over to the control of the Parks Commission. I've personally been out on site 3 times. I've met with residents 1 time on site, especially at Parmenter Road. And we have members on the ad hoc committee that are from the chair of the Conservation Commission. As a matter of fact, I should have asked you, Heather, I don't know whether we've got more than 2 of us here.
Mary is on Zoom.
Mary's on Zoom, so that's 3. We don't have Brandon, and we don't have Matthew.
Do not see Brandon.
Okay, we posted this as a meeting just in case we had. So Anna represents Parks, she's on our board. Mary represents Conservation Commission. Matthew represents the Planning Board. And so we've had discussions in public forum with all of these different board members and with the public a number of times, yes.
Okay. I just want to comment briefly, and I know you didn't mean any offense. In this setting, usually we refer to Heather as the town manager.
I'm
Matt,
sorry.
the town manager. We slip up, I do it too.
Okay.
But just want to make that comment. All right, so going back to Selectman Imke, if you have any follow-ups.
Yeah, I think, so Mr. Chair, we will open this up for public comment, is that right?
We will.
Okay, and my next question is to Anna. So the parks, you're saying the parks can't talk to residents in terms of getting feedback about plans until you actually have, I don't know what the right word is, jurisdiction or ownership of the, not ownership, but you have the property under your purview, I guess.
Right. I mean, we can't start a process on a piece of land that's not ours.
Just just collecting feedback on possible plans, or, because installing a boat ramp and putting picnic tables are 2 very, very different things.
Yeah, so we can't, like, I'm not sure, we're not talking about buying a piece of land, we're talking about a piece of land that's already owned by the
Right.
town. So if it was something that we needed to put funds, but we don't have to put funds, this is a question of exploring. And we don't deal with any land that's not under the care and control of the Parks Commission. And, and since this is town land, if we look and we say, we don't think this is a good idea, it goes back to, the care and control of the select board, and it doesn't really take much for that, but we don't take action on land that's not under our care and control.
Yeah, I was thinking more in terms of the impact to the abutters and the residents on the lake, putting another boat ramp in, for example.
Well, and we had discussions about that, and what a boat launch means, what a hand carried is, and it's just too much to be defined when the first constraint you're going to have is actually the property. The first thing we probably would need to do is to survey the property, get the title clear, and really start from that. Even though we might want to have a very large boat there, very likely based on the land and what I've seen, we can probably only do hand launch vessels there on either property. So there is some land on the Stump Cove that I can envision some picnic tables, some place for families to come and aggregate, which could be fun, but until we start the process, we won't know. And the survey will probably be the first step.
The title for 51 Parmenter Road is clear, though.
It is clear.
That's all I have, thank you.
So I have a simple question, although I think I know the answer to this. So we're talking about 2 properties. I'm looking in our Google Drive. Did anybody bring the lot lines of this property, what they look like, what they're...
I mean, we can open that very quickly on Town Manager on Access Lunenburg.
Well, that, I mean, so we're talking about properties, and we already have a letter from the abutters who are going to speak in this, and I think it would be helpful to know what the size of these properties are, and what the locus of other properties are, and what the roadways are. First of all, the first thing I know is that if you're talking about parking, and you've just said that, well, both properties, you believe, are only going to be hand launch, even if they're hand launched, you got to get your boat there. And if you get your boat there, unless you're going to bring it on your bicycle, I'm assuming you're driving it there, which means you need parking. And these are, both places are renowned for not being easy to park. And if it's not going to be a parking lot, you'd be parking on the street. That's just like, those are the first 4 things that came to my mind in the beginning of this whole thing.
Right, so we're going to go back to, these are all possibilities. Right now, Parramatta Road, there's marks of someone parking on the lot that's owned by the town, which, it's public land, they can. So there's clearly some park. There is a trailer parked on the lot.
But you're talking.
I understand, but you asked me 4 questions.
You understand that I'm going to tell you the people who are doing that illegally.
I understand, so
Okay.
I'm not, I wasn't done with my point. You made your 4. So that shows us there is a possibility for it, and we want to improve those conditions. And what you're asking is a detailed plan for, the first step is to get a survey, is to get engineers. We cannot engage into that process, and you haven't engaged in that process.
No, the first part would be, what is the size of the lot?
I can tell you, the Parramatta Road is .31, and the other one is much larger, I believe. Do you remember one?
12 point something acres, I think.
12 point some acres.
12 acres.
Yeah, it has frontage on, it has frontage on Reservoir Road, it has frontage on Fire Road 12, and coming off Fire Road 12, just after you get off Reservoir, there was a small dirt road that connected from Fire Road 12 back up to Reservoir Road, and the DPW years ago closed off the Reservoir Road end of that. So there's actually a dirt road that abuts that parcel. As you go down Fire Road 12, one of the abutters on Fire Road 12 is very nicely paved part of the town property. So there's actually a parking area right there right now.
Madam Town Manager, that was one that we talked about in the past, right? That somebody had-
Both properties, the
Had
board
people
is
paving?
yes,
Okay.
familiar with. We've
Right.
dealt with encroachment issues on both
Right.
properties that we addressed.
Okay.
So
Right now, there's a shed on the Parramatta Road.
Well, again, we can get that taken care of.
Yeah.
that's an encroachment issue we're dealing with.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Let's just get ahead of ourselves just a little bit for hypothetical purposes. Let's just assume that after all deliberation, the rebuttal case from people that are against this, all of this, that this board were inclined to do this. Has there been thought put into restricting access to Lunenburg residents and how that might be pragmatically executed?
Well, so again, you're asking for specific plans, and this would be part of our process to figure out. However, we have the town beach that right now, we have a system that works that we sell season passes to resident and non-residents, and it's a revenue stream, and, there is ways to do it, certain things. So the question is, if we do something like that, would that serve the residents at their best? Like, is that the most ideal for something that, if someone wants to go fishing, people that fish, they like going fishing earlier, I don't know, 5 in the morning on a summer day. My first question when you say, is that the most ideal? I'm saying, I don't know, we got to explore that, but there are many considerations that, unless we go through the process of formalizing or figuring out what is the best use for these parcels, we're never going to know, and we'll never be able to, get to that ideal scenario.
Okay. I mean, some things I was imagining I should say, in thinking about the town beach, I mean, that has an employee there that's looking at passes as a gatekeeper, which is a cost, of course. But perhaps maybe something, I'm just more passive, like a dash whiteboard parking pass or something that maybe the police could come around periodically and see if anybody's, just to create some kind of deterrence.
Right.
But it's looking way down the line. I mean,
Right.
we're not at a decision by any means. We haven't even heard the case against it yet.
Right.
So,
Well, you know, when you say deterrence, the biggest deterrence on public access of that nature is really the infrastructure that you create. So, for example, if you go to Fort Pond, which is in Lancaster off Pond Road, you know, they have a parking space there for one trailer, and one truck with a trailer, and they have a big boat launch there. And then some people park along the road, but, you know, it's never the case that you can actually park 10 cars there with a big trailer. And so the infrastructure that you create will become the deterrence to, you know, to the access that you don't want to have.
okay, and also just, I know some of the history of this, because I remember 3 years ago, this being when I was running, I remember this being a discussion point about who does what for the lake, and so I do need to be refreshed, but I do remember enough to know that there are issues, and, you know, who pays for what. The dam, can Lunenburg even legally restrict the access to Lunenburg-only residents, or because, if I'm not mistaken, the state funded some of this, is it just open public access to anybody that wants to go there, even if they're not a Lunenburg resident? Do you know the
I
answer to
don't
that?
know about that, do you?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think,
But,
yeah,
you know, when you're talking about the dam, you know, it's important to know, too, when the town took over, when the state built the dam with taxpayer money, the town has been maintaining that dam, and we have a 10,000 line item under the DPW for maintaining the dam every year. And that's, according, the DPW this past year was asked by the Finance Committee if that's used, and he said yes, because we got to have, you know, a company to do, I don't know the details, but that's a line item that's used. So, you know, another interesting thing that about access, who does what. So one, the town is doing something. We are paying, the taxpayer is paying and not getting the benefit. But actually for the town to have public access, now we're opening for the possibility of getting other public funds for the repair of the lake, for doing other things. Because right now the residents, the way they are, and also Hickory Hills Lake, they cannot apply for any funds that are available for public entities. If we have public access, you know, we could start applying for grants such as the Conservation Commission and the Snow Riders. They have applied for grants together. So we're opening up for hopefully helping the lake become healthier.
thank you.
All right, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So first, thank you for the level of detail. First, I think that we are going to need to schedule another meeting with you guys. So one is that I think we should, if you can provide us with the agreement that the town entered into when we accepted that state money, I think we need to get a little clarity on what those terms and conditions were. And then also, you know, you had mentioned that you don't have the property under your authority. But I know that we did get some plans emailed to us by Paula Bertram, and so, and of course, we can go on the GIS and see it, and so we've had the opportunity to see it. Excuse me, and I'm also familiar with the property. I know that we had some encroachment issues down there, and then one of the residents who lives, I think 49 Parmenter, who had encroached for years and kind of ignored our encroachment, was trying to sell and and didn't want us to take 2 years to respond to his request like he took 2 years to respond to ours. And so I did go down there and meet with the resident. I'm very familiar. I think the resident on the other side is likely encroaching currently too. But I did go down there and I am a bit familiar with it. But I think that what we may need is even though you don't have any money invested in this, it's to get a better visualization, as Mr. Alonso indicated, of kind of what your thoughts are. So, you know, right now, the town, underneath the care and custody, let me to clarify, underneath the care and custody of the select board, we have a couple hundred acres. All right, and by my estimation, about 150 acres or so are being hayed by people. We don't even know who's doing it. All right, and I'm just being honest. We have trails that go through a lot of land. We've had a lot of requests from conservation saying, hey, we have rules for conservation property, but the select board has zero rules for property in the care and custody of the select board. So part of me is kind of torn, and I'm trying not to opine, I'm trying to get to the question I'm asking, but part of me is kind of torn because part of me actually likes the idea that, the public has property and there's really no specific rules for it, and if they want to access it, go ahead and do it. We don't advertise it, so the people kind of in the know, which are usually your residents, do it, but that's not how government typically should function. It's just those in the know. So I'm kind of getting to the question here, which is, there's a lot of things that need to be addressed, right? We have parking concerns, there's it's just not really any parking there, and I think that people are going to want to know kind of what the plan is or what the thoughts are before we talk about transferring this property. I think that there's concerns about, ADA accessibility. Once you start formally making property accessible to the public and you're doing more than just passively owning it, then you have to make it accessible. It's a pretty steep incline. So I'm kind of wondering how far you guys have gotten into the thought process of what is going to be required of you if you formally try to make this accessible.
So, although I hear you, I don't mean to sound like a broken disc, but, we can't go down that road. It's just, the process, just try to envision the Marshall Park process that we have gone through, It has taken years, surveys after surveys of getting feedback, of getting engineers. It's not something that's done by, our initial vision, because after our initial vision was one, but when we got there, all the wetlands, all the restrictions that we had, the ledge, the picture is very different. The thing about it here is we're not asking to buy land to use town capital for that. These are land that we already have it. And if all it takes is, I believe the most it's going to take is a town meeting vote either way. I don't even know if it requires a town meeting vote. It does. So it's a town meeting vote. Anyone can take this to town meeting and request a vote. If you don't like what we are doing, put it back. So you're asking for something really down the line that we like to do it well, just as we have been doing with Marshall Park. And sometimes it's the financial position that the town is in it, is, how much money can we get it outside? If we can get grants, like Paula has said that when she was working the Mass Fisheries, they said they'll do everything. Hey, I want to be, pie in the sky for that. But if we get it, there's so much that it's not the goal. We can't possibly give you that. We are asking for be giving the opportunity to explore that. And if people don't like it, anyone can take this to town meeting vote and put it back under anyone's care and control. And, what we're looking for is your support to hopefully having this done in this town meeting so that we can, get these things engaged. So before this even happens, I can tell you in terms of timeline, we have Marshall Park that we are currently working on. We have Northfield Park, that's another need that the town has. And this will probably come even later than that. So the timeline it's really out there for us to start exploring and working on this, because it's a lot of work whenever you start doing a park. But we can't give you, because we don't have the constraints of the engineer. We don't have the survey, the limitations that we have. So, what I can say is everything we have done at Marshall, we have had over 1,200 responses from surveys and engagement. And I believe we have the best plan that we could have had for Marshall Park. And we are going to engage in the same process. Do I want to increase traffic from out-of-towners, people that are just coming with big boats down Reservoir Road? No, I don't. I don't think that's good for the town. I don't think that's good for the residents. But I do want to have an area that's small, that fits 3 or 5 cars. If you have 3 or 5 cars, people don't come from far because they know they can't park there. What are the chances that, like Fort Pond? Fort Pond's a great example, and they actually have a boat access ramp. You never find 10 cars there because it's so limited. People don't come from Shrewsbury to Lunenburg to put a big boat on the Fort Pond because they're likely not going to get parking. What you see there is little boats that come and, probably bigger than what we want. So unfortunately, I don't think it's the right time for that piece. But it is the right time to make this decision now because of all the work that the Open Space Committee has done in the past 4 years.
Okay. I have a couple of quick follow-ups here. Is the Parks Commission unanimously in support of this transfer?
Yes.
All right. We have in front of us, or I just passed it down, we have a petition that's signed by many residents who live in Lake Shirley. I'll note a couple of addresses, 31 Parmenter, 21 Parmenter. I know Rounds Road is right there, so, 73 Round, 20 Round, 34 Round, 82 Round. And that's just to name a couple, Ruth Street's in this area too, so 13 Ruth, 51 Ruth, 75 Ruth, 80 Ruth. So the residents who immediately live nearby are not in support of it, and that much is clear. And so the question then is, someone tonight, so on this petition, they also have comments. One of it is parking, that can be mitigated. You can make time slots for people to sign up for, so that can be mitigated. Same thing with traffic, so those can be mitigated pretty easily. Trash, that can be mitigated. But ultimately, beyond those things, and I know that people say public safety because I think there's this image that somehow that grabs people's attention more. But I think ultimately what it is that you have a lot of people who own expensive homes around Lake Shirley. All right, and they didn't buy, if they wanted to buy a house on Lake Whalum, they would have bought a house on Lake Whalum, which clearly has a lot of access to the public. But they bought a house on Lake Shirley knowing that the access is kind of restricted and kind of limited. And the fear from the residents, I would expect, haven't heard from them yet, but the fear from the residents I would expect is, well, now you're going to have all these people that are coming on the lake, which becomes a policing issue for us, which becomes a safety or a quality of life issue for us. So, as you think about this property, I want you to kind of take a first shot at answering that question coming from the residents of why, although the town may have entered into that agreement almost 40 years ago, why is it relevant today for the public to need access to this specific lake if there's access already through Cove Road, if there's already, or not Cove, through Sandy Pond, I think, whatever it's called.
I don't know.
Shady Point. If there's already access through Shady Point, we already have Lake Whalum, why do we need to make public access here? So I'm just trying to be on the forefront of getting you that first stab at answering that question.
Sure. Well, the town was promised this 35 years ago, using taxpayer money, and we still don't have that. That has been wrong for 35 years. And you have a group of people whose mandate was to look for, more use of town-owned land and open space to expand that. And we have done this work.
If I may just interrupt, but you, by your own admission tonight, the public is already using it. You said that there's vehicle trails.
And it's not formalized, and it's not safe, it's not at the best. We want it to be, Stump Cove, which was given to the town, for using taxpayer money. And for me, it's like the most logical thought is like, you promised the town this, and now you're negating on that promise. I mean, for me, that's just the bottom basic of everything. Let's start on that. Then now we're using tax money to maintain the dam, and you still don't want the town to use something you promised 35 years ago? I mean, with all due respect, I just want to say, give me a break. I mean, really, it's like, and the thing about the Parmenter Road lot, what's more, even on the give me a break is, they're using it. They just don't want other people to use it. How insulting it is that. I'm sorry, but it is insulting. And they're not doing the best for the lake the way they're using. They have a shed there. And by the way, the septic tank they removed that you gave authorization, the erosion fence is still there. They didn't even plant the grass they're supposed to and close that with Conservation Commission. That's still open with Conservation. So it's just, I can't, this is not what people would like, but this is the agreement that has been. And, if you don't want people using the lot that you're using, don't use it illegally. And don't come telling me that you don't want other people to use it. It's just, I don't even know how to begin after that. It's just, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I'm not vocalizing my own opinions because I'll express those
leave it
later.
to me then.
But I'm trying to play a little devil's advocate here. Thank you, Anna. I want to turn.
Do you have something?
Yeah, can I jump in
Yes,
just
of
for a
course.
second, Mr. Chairman? we've heard a lot of these concerns, and I've heard them in person down there, we heard them in our public meetings, and I agree with some of them. Some are, they're all concerns that need to be addressed. Almost all of these concerns have to do with the Parmenter Road parcel, which has some significant constraints. We're also talking about the larger parcel down on Fire Road 12 and Reservoir Road, which doesn't have the same kinds of constraints. And it could be that when Parks takes a look at these two parcels, which is what we're asking you to allow them to do, they may say, well, you're right, Parmenter just doesn't work, but maybe the Reservoir Road parcel does work. So we have two different parcels that we're talking about. One that has, houses very close by, and it's a very small parcel, and there's 3 roads, and it's a steep incline, and there's a lot of issues there. And then we have this other parcel that has a significant frontage on the lake, a lot of it pretty flat, and several places where you could park cars fairly easily without parking them right next to somebody's house.
Any follow-up questions from the board?
I do, I have one. So I guess directly to the question we're being asked, the transfer of control.
Yes.
As the chair said, town-owned, any land owned by the town under the control of the select board is open. So therefore, if it's open to the public, it's open to the Parks Commission. I don't understand the necessity at this time of transferring control when they could come up with the plans, they have access to the land, they could come up with the plans at any point and start the process. Why do they need the control before they start? I mean, at least I'm hearing, and please tell me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing we won't start the process until we have control, which I don't understand, because they have control of doing plans. They don't have control of doing construction, but visiting it, measuring it, coming up with back of the napkin plans, going surveys, all that can be done without any control shift at all.
So the
And we
suggestion.
can also extend, permission to the...
So is the idea, we don't go about making plans on other people's land, so just, it's not a thing that Parks Commission tend to do. That's a little brazen, that idea.
Other people's land, but this is
Yeah.
owned by the town.
No,
And the Parks Commission is the
I think
town.
she's-
Tom,
Speaking of-
I'm sorry, you really think that it
under
would
her
be
care
appropriate
custody.
for Parks Commission to start making plans on public land that's not under the care and control of the Parks Commission? I mean, it seems a little out of order. I think the proper thing is to come here and say, hey, we would like to explore that, give us the authorization for that. Be on the same page as us
Okay,
when
well,
we go to town
but
meeting.
Authorization is different than, we could give you authorization right now. You don't need we don't need a town meeting vote to transfer control. I just
don't
don't
know,
have
actually.
I don't
That's a
understand the
question that I
request,
had.
I guess.
Just to explore options for the parcel, you wouldn't need transfer of control.
To transfer the care and control, do you need a
That
town
does,
meeting vote?
that does require town meeting vote.
Okay.
And I believe it may be irrevocable as well, and only through a legislature vote, which I have to look into that.
So I think, based on what I have learned from the grants that we just applied, the answer, that's not the case. It's only if the town meeting makes a vote to put under Chapter 45 or 43 or 41. So it's 2 different actions.
Then it becomes Article 97.
97, right.
Right.
Any other follow-up questions from the board before we go to public?
I think I think this is premature to actually do this, but I just wanted to put on the radar.
Can't help yourself.
You know how I'm all about the site walk. Maybe that would be instructive at some point.
Yeah, we need to schedule one.
All right.
All right.
I know, Anna, that you do a great job defending, and I know that, we, in our capacity here, our questions, our roles is through our roles.
Oh, no, I
And they're not
agree.
always expressing a viewpoint as much as they're expressing kind of the nitty-gritty of
Right.
where we get there. But you will hear our opinions on this coming soon. So I want to go to the public for we'll start with the people in the room. Thank you, Mr. Toole. We're going to start with the residents in the room who have any public comments, and we'll do a mix of residents in the room, residents who are on Zoom, who have any comments that they want to state, and then any other type of any other type of questions that they may have. Before we call anyone forward, I want to acknowledge receipt of a couple of things. We did get a receipt, hold it in front of us, and we have copies of a petition, again, that was signed by some residents. I'll read the beginning of it. It says, "The neighborhood of Round Road, Parmenter Road, Johnson Street, and Rue Street petition the Town of Lunenburg Select Board to keep the 51 Parmenter parcel of land under the jurisdiction of the Select Board and not transfer to the Parks Commission to be used as a boat launch into Lake Shirley. The safety in our streets and waterways are at stake. We are a very thickly settled neighborhood with many children, walkers, dogs, and biking. The proposed location is in a dangerous intersection, and the water is a busy cove with high-powered speedboats and jet skis. A public boat launch will change our neighborhood forever." And again, this is signed by several residents. Someone took the effort to go door to door. You can tell from the different signatures, and clearly, more than likely, the same pen. And then the other thing that we've received is a note or a letter, and this arrived today from an attorney, and this is from Dombrowski, Avini, and Bunnell, PC, counsels at law, and they represent Virginia Wolfram, who is a 45 Parmenter Road, and it's a multi-page letter that goes into concerns about conservation, about ADA, et cetera. There's a couple of different site maps here, and then, of course, at the end, we get the typical lawyer threat, don't question my client's resolve, which, of course, that falls on deaf ears a lot of the time with us, because public good is always primary. Nonetheless, we are very much so aware that we're facing an uphill opposition from the public, but I would read into that from the petition that however we've been managing or not managing the property seems to be favorable to the neighbors, and they are not in favor of us making any change. So with that, I will ask for any public comments from the public.
Good evening. John Dombrowski. So I submitted the letter. Perhaps I need to work on my conclusions. The letter's pretty detailed, and I think that a lot of the questions that the board members have asked have sort of gone to the concerns that are expressed in the letter. Just to summarize, I am representing Virginia Wolfram. She does live next door to 51 Parmenter Road, and obviously is very much against this. I'll just get into some practical issues that are there. It is a corner lot. Some of the details of the lot are expressed in the letter. And interestingly enough, where you would enter into that lot is at the junction of three roads, Parmenter, Ruth, and Johnson, all of which are very narrow roads. So the reality is that if this were to be a public boat ramp or handheld, however you have it, as Mr. Alonso indicated, you're going to have to drive your car there. And you're going to have to leave your car there for a period of time. And really the only place to park is going to be on that narrow street. The other thing I'd bring up, which is a very practical concern, this is not a lot that the town acquired from a tax taking. This is a lot that the town purchased for purposes of installing a municipal drain, stormwater drain. The lot has 39 feet of lake frontage. It's a pie-shaped. So it's bigger at the corner on the street, but then it narrows significantly where it meets the water. And the drainage is located on the left side if you're facing the water. And if you run the title, if you look at the language surrounding the easement rights to the drainage, there's 10 feet on either side. So now you've got even less room to work, less room to maneuver. I've submitted a lot of detail in the letter, different measurements to try to give the board an indication of just what's involved with ADA compliance, the steepness of it. And it is significant. It's a significant lot to develop. I agree. I don't know why there's a need at this juncture to turn over ownership of this lot to someone other than this board, particularly where there's a stormwater drainage issue, and that was the reason it was purchased. And I think another thing the board needs to be aware of is there's a contemplated development across the street, across Parmenter Road, which is directly across the street from this lot. There've been talk of 10 single-family homes all the way up to another condominium complex, but either way, that development is only going to increase stormwater drainage and obviously impact what's already there. I understand what the two ad hoc committees are saying, what they're advocating for. I commend them. Obviously, they're passionate. They've done a lot of work. But there are times when you look at something and is it feasible or is it really just not feasible? And in this particular situation, the detriments, the cons to even trying to develop 51 Parmenter Road in this particular, or this proposed fashion, far outweigh any benefit that might be achieved. So I just want to thank you for allowing me to speak and for having the meeting on this, in this inclement weather. Thank you.
Thank you. We may follow up with you, attorney, regarding your client's likely encroachment that I believe we've previously communicated. Tonight's obviously not the forum for it. We may, you may get a communication from our attorney related to that. Please trust that we do not retaliate. Simply, we've had ongoing encroachment issues on 51 Parmenter specifically for a little bit of time. So we may, it sounds as if your client is very interested in making sure that town property kind of remains in its current condition. So hopefully, it shouldn't be a big leap for them to take their personal stuff off the property.
Yeah, I think, I believe she's going to speak, and she can speak a little bit to that, but she purchased the property, I believe, in 2022, so
She inherited it.
she inherited some of that, I think, if in fact there is encroachment. I don't know. I know there's a shed, and there may or may not be. I think there'd be a need for a survey, but yes, I do agree with that.
All right, any other public, sir, I'm going to call this gentleman in the very back with the black sweater. And then sir with the white hat and black hat, Under Armour, I'm calling you next.
I got lucky tonight, I gotta go quick.
Please state your name and address.
Michael Lovewell, 579 Reservoir Road. This is a very interesting thing that's happening here. First of all, you couldn't have found two worse parcels to try to get into. First of all, we shouldn't even be talking about the one parcel, because we don't even know if we own it yet, or it's not clear. It's like me selling a car without a title. You can't do it yet. So I think you got the cart before the horse here. The other parcel, and Attorney Dombrowski is very, very familiar with this parcel. Very weedy, very shallow. That's one of the shallowest coves in that lake. So to get into that lake, I mean, how are you going to launch a kayak or a little boat or something? There's going to be some issues there. You know, the other thing is, Lake Shirley is not Golden Pond. You know, this is not the place where, you know, you're out with the rowboat and, you know, got your umbrella out and thinking you're having a nice picnic day. I mean, there's a lot of speedboats out there with big motors, people water skiing, jet skis. It's a recreational lake that it's busy there. I mean, unless you're going at 5 o'clock in the morning or, you know, 8 o'clock at night, there's not a lot of times to be out there kayaking or canoeing that you're not going to be, you know, in the public way of all the boats. And then on the weekends, I don't even go out until they close, because the chaos is crazy over there. But we live there, that's what we do, that's why we bought there, so that's what it is. But this is really you gotta really look at this. This is, I think we're opening up Pandora's box here. I think, getting into this or putting docks, either place is gonna be a real tough place. And if you open up to the public, you're gonna have to have access for handicapped people, or like a restroom. Where do people go to the bathroom and stuff like that? There's a lot of things that need to be looked at. And I'm glad we're gonna have another meeting at some point to maybe they can, have some kind of plan, or at least show us something that, and I'm not saying that maybe, people use it as it is now. I don't know why we have to change it. But anyways, I just wanted to come and say that tonight, and I do want to say I appreciate everything you guys do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir. On Zoom with your hands up.
Hi, I'm Jerry Brown, 5 Johnson Street, Lunenburg, direct abutter to the parcel in question on Parmenter. Mr. Dombrowski did a great job of touching on a lot of points that I was going to have, all these little notes I was going to tell you about, but he pretty much already hit all those. Spot is just not a good spot for what you're looking to do. And my main thing is they don't even really know what they want to do. So I'm just totally against it, and I think you're going to hear the same from anybody else who comes up here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call a resident on Zoom with their hand up. It's just noted as iPad number 9. Sir, if you want to proceed, and if I can ask Pac to pin him on our screen.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, my name is Gary Spin. I live at 7 Ruth Street, which is directly across the street from the Parmenter property there. I just want to voice my opposition to this. I hear what you're saying, and I'm trying to remain open-ended. Two concerns. I want to make sure that people realize that the Lake Shirley Improvement Corporation is the only body that takes care and maintains that lake. And it costs us $300 each member who chips in to help us, and the budget for that runs in the $50,000 to $100,000 range per year. Now, I would be much more in favor of opening this all up to the public if there was the town that was willing to take over that cost to maintain the lake. It could quickly become a cesspool or a body of weeds if we don't maintain that lake and do the upkeep that the nonprofit organization, it's all volunteers of people on the lake, does in order to keep that lake the beautiful entity that it is. The other thing that you need to really realize is there is going to be a tremendous liability issue if you start putting more kayaks and more small boats out of the Parmenter property that would go into that area is now called Millionaire's Cove, and then out into the main body of the lake. Because there are people with big engines and fast boats that go into that cove, Millionaire.
Froze.
Is it everyone on Zoom or just the gentleman?
Just him.
All right.
Yep. Catastrophe, there will be one, and then forget or I won't say forget, but irregardless of the fact that the emotional and terrible toll it would take on somebody being injured, there would be a massive lawsuit that would take place, I'm sure. Thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you, sir. We did lose you for about 10, 15 seconds there, but we did hear everything else that you said. It was just about 10, 15 seconds. So
I don't know what 10 or 15 seconds were lost.
But I think we understood the general comment that you were making, and I want to thank you for taking the time this evening to join with us and make the comment. Do we have anyone else?
Just one other thing, you can add my name to that petition. It wasn't on there. I'm not in town. I currently winter in California, so I was not in town when that petition was sent around. But you can certainly add my name to that petition that you have in your hands there.
Yeah,
Chair?
I probably can't, but
Mr. Chair, may I ask again what your name is?
My name is Gary Spint.
Yeah,
Well, somebody signed for you.
no.
Oh, somebody signed for me.
His name is on this petition.
we don't have call-outs, we don't have call-outs from,
Okay.
we have to be at the podium.
I just wanted to let him know that his name was on this, but now you're saying,
My name is on it. Well, I agree with that. It wasn't put on there without my permission.
Okay. All right, do we have anyone else on Zoom that would like to make a comment related to this, or have a question? We're just checking the Zoom. All right, anyone else in the room? Yes.
There's a hand up.
Oh,
There's a woman.
yeah, that's a board member. We'll call Karen in a
Okay.
moment. Ma'am? Yeah, that's a board member. We'll call Karen.
Okay, so thank you for giving me the opportunity just to briefly speak. I am Virginia Wolfram. I am the new resident owner of 45 Parmenter. I just wanted to clarify a quick couple points here. So I know that there had been some issues with the previous residents. That is not me. The sheds that had issues, the markings of the septic, this is all things that were not part of my purchase and not part of my plans and not part of communication with me. So, I can be empathetic and apologetic for a lot of the commentary that comes through, but there hasn't been a lot of direct commentary with me directly. I have joined many of these online meetings or ad hoc meetings with Open Space and with the Parks Commission to try to firstly and foremost understand what the plan was, why they were pursuing the lot. Before purchasing, we had looked at a lot of the meeting notes or trying to understand a lot about the property. A lot of this was not clear at the time. So the couple points to clarify just based on tonight's comments is one, that shed, right? The shed right on the right of the carport. If you look at the listing photos, that was there when I bought it. There was no indication that it was encroaching. There used to be a shed that was far, far right, kind of where there's a cleared part of land where the previous owner had one. And I know that the town had asked him to remove that, and that was removed to the opposite side of the parcel, right? But there hadn't been any communication with me about that specific shed ever having been an issue. So if it is an issue, it's unclear to me. If you look at the septic plans, there looks like there's extended feet to the right of the carport. I don't particularly know, right? I have not surveyed the property myself or paid that cost to understand. So that's one piece. The other piece about the tracks, just for clarity, snowstorms, we had a couple, somebody backed their plow right into that lot and pulled around and just came back out to the street. I don't know why. You can see the deep grooves right now. I saw them even when I was at the house. But it's not physically on the lot where there's trees. It was like kind of in that kind of cleared space as I'm indicating that's on the lot itself. So I just really quickly wanted to kind of put those 2 points of note just for you guys and just for clarity on that. I think, as a new owner, on the lake, I think the hardest part for me is that, even just looking at my parcel where I have nearly 100 feet of lake access, where my dock resides and my neighbor's dock resides, we're nearly already touching. And now we have this corner pie-shaped lot, and we're looking to somehow launch something into what looks like could be a lot of issues with how the docks are, how the residents are on the lake. So I understand what Parks and Commission is trying to look for. I understand, right, the select board taking care of the community and property. I have personally not seen anybody walk that lot other than Open Space and Parks. I see their cars, I have cameras, I see people. It's typically just them, they're looking at the land itself. I have never seen anybody publicly just kind of work through those lots to do any sort of launching, at least in my short tenure of being there. So, I think overall, I'm not going to go through all the points of safety. I think, it's unfortunate even that I had to, get a lawyer, I think, when I started, but it was so unclear on the meetings for me what the purpose of this lot was and what they were doing, and it became very nervous for me because I said, I don't understand really how we're going to put all of this into this tight corner, this tight space where we're just all trying to figure out where things go, and it was never clear, right? We kept on asking for, had we discussed with the chief of police, had we walked with DPW, what's the plan of the space? Are you looking at ADA compliance? Have you looked down the grade? Give us more details so that we can understand this, because the enforcement issues, the regulations, the statements about no access to the lake, that's not all true. They have access to Lake off Stump Cove today, and they have Shady Point, both in-state and out-of-state, where they can launch boats, and there's restrooms, and there's enforcement, and there's controls, and they have and also provide financial support to the lake based on having that spot. So I think it's just having that clarity or understanding would be very helpful as a resident, and I know I don't stand alone. You know, as soon as these questions came up, I closed, and 2 days later, there was a Parks meeting about this, and it was a shock to me. So we went around as residents, and we found out, you know, and we all tried to understand, and I think that's why you're getting so much opposition from, you know, the residents as a whole. I think we want to understand more about what the use of this would be, and understand the safeties, the concerns, the parking, the enforcement, you know, the loitering, the traffic, everything, because it's a lot. I mean, I don't need to go through all the details. You have a lot of them written, and, you know, luckily John has, you know, taken me on as a client to be able to do a lot of that work for me. So, thank you for the opportunity, but I also just want to be very clear that I can't speak to everything that's always happened on that lot before, and it is sometimes very frustrating to hear that this is a new shed, or this is new, or that's new on meetings, and I don't rebuttal, because I don't want to fight this, right? I just also want it to be fair, and I don't feel like right now as a resident this is fair. Yeah.
Ms. Wolfram, we don't normally respond always directly to public comment, but I do want to respond to you. So first, welcome to Lunenburg.
Thank you.
I think that you bought your house about December of 22.
I closed like end of November 2022, yeah.
So the previous owner had to work with us to be able to put in the new septic tank, and he had a long-standing encroachment.
Yeah.
He basically ignored. We take the position generally that we don't like to sue our residents. We always want to work things out, and we really try to work things out. The last thing that we're all elected here, right? The last thing we should be doing is getting in an oppositional position with the residents. You know, and we all know that regardless, the thing was settled. Sometimes, and I know the Conservation Commission has had the same experience, where when people buy property, you can buy an existing encroachment, and it does become your responsibility to remedy. But, you know, in the way that we function as a town is, you know, these are exploratory conversations. So in order for anything to actually happen, right, it would have to be, you know, this board it's already public property. This board could try to pursue to do exactly what the Parks Commission is requesting. We could do that without any kind of care and custody. We could put in boat ramps if we wanted to pursue that course of action. So we already have the full authority to do what the Parks Commission is requesting for us to do. We just have a history as a board of not taking that approach, of being a bit more hands-off with the property that we own. But we always try to, you know, one of the questions we always ask everyone is, have you talked to the abutters? And the abutter conversation is always something that's very important. You know, abutters don't necessarily get to dictate what happens next door, but they do have influence, and we try to mitigate oftentimes neighbor concerns. But in the process of this is, you know, we are a town, all of our authority comes directly from the people, and because we have a town meeting style of government, we do not have the authority to allocate funds to do what's being requested. That would have to be at town meeting. And so the public is always part of a process here. So while we have the exploratory, as you heard it tonight, if this advances and if this board decides not to take this up on our own, which, you know, we could do, but that would all happen in a public meeting.
Yeah.
And if it goes to the parks, it's going to be a town meeting vote, there's going to be a whole presentation, and then all the budget hearings that lead up to the money for it, which will come later. Those are all public meetings, everyone gets to participate. So before we ever get to the point of actually allocating a dollar, usually the public has had multiple opportunities for multiple months to weigh in on what happens.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we're a community of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I understand that when you're new in a community, sometimes it can be frustrating not knowing kind of how small towns work, and then you get this false image that, you know, small towns, it's who you know, but here in Lunenburg, I will say that that's really not true for the most part, and you are certainly welcome to continue to be part of the process. Retaining a lawyer is up to you. Typically, when someone retains a lawyer, though, we stop directly communicating, and we have our attorney communicate with their attorney.
Yep, understood, and yeah, and I appreciate you even taking the time. I wanted to make sure that it was clarified, and certainly, like I said, I think everybody's offered the same opinion on the general safety risk of that property, so I don't have to belabor that statement all over again, but.
Thank you, Ms.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We're going to go to a resident who is on Zoom. Karen, I'm going to come to you next. We're going to go to...
a resident who is on Zoom. Karen, come to you next.
Oh, I hear myself echoing in here. We're going to Joanna.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Joanna. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Joanna Bellata, 362 Sunset Lane. I first want to thank Chairman Michael Ray Jeffries for inviting us to participate in this meeting. It's the first invitation Lake Shirley's had to have any conversation regarding all of this. We've gone to meetings with parks in open space, and they didn't go that well. I don't think we were perceived well on our concerns. I understand the thought process behind what they're doing, but I just don't think it makes sense, especially on Palmenter Road, as the previous speakers who spoke very well stated, that was purchased because of the corner lot for the water, as well as snow, because of the small roads, the rule, when they did all the plowing, that the corners couldn't make turns without seeing. So that land was purchased for specific reasons. Stump Cove, as everybody has said, is public access. We have kept our agreement to let the public go there, but we've also maintained, and which I thought everybody wanted, was a vegetative state. We weren't going to clear it out, put parking, put boat launches where we have Shady Point 500 feet down the road that has public access, that monitors boats going in and out for safety, for weed quality, for vegetation hanging off boats, kayaks, etc. But we've always, there's people that fish at Stump Cove, people that do put in kayaks. It's not a high quantity, but people do utilize it, and nobody's ever been turned away from not doing that. The previous speaker spoke of grants. The LSIC is a 501(c)(3). We've gotten grants. We've got a 319 grant, and we did numerous work around the lake with that grant due to our nonprofit status with the state. We've worked with the town administrator in those grants as well. So I truly believe the two properties, the way they are, work well. If there's residents in Lunenburg that want lake access to Lake Shirley, Shady Point has always opened up their property for Lunenburg residents, and I think it works great for everybody. And I just wanted to share that, and I want to thank you again for inviting us, because we really want to be part of the conversation where we're direct abutters to these two pieces of property, and nobody's ever invited us to be a collaborative source in these conversations.
Ms. Bellotti, you are very welcome. I think that in my time here, I've tried to work collaboratively with all people, and I really do believe that in the end, we get to the right place. So
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. Ms. Menard.
Good evening. Karen Menard, 672 Page Street. I just want to be clear on one thing. I'm actually making a public comment right now. I am a member of the Parks Commission, but this next comment is just a straight out public comment. My husband and I moved here in 2004 with our family. And of course, one of the first things we saw driving by was Lake Shirley. At that point, we started looking to see where public access was, and we had a really difficult time determining where it was. By the time we figured out that it was Stump Cove, it was a few years later. And in my opinion, Stump Cove is not reasonable public access to Lake Shirley, and Shady Point is absolutely positively not public access. Even though they allow the public to go there to launch, it is private property. They make the rules of who can enter their property, and it's not something that's open as a public piece of land. As time went on and I realized that 51 Parmenter was actually owned by the town, I have actually gone down there as a resident. I've gone down there with my husband as a resident. I have never launched a boat down there, but I have certainly watched that property as a resident. And to me, looking to where it is, I understand everybody's concerns. There's always concerns around change, but I think that the groups that are involved in trying to make public access are reasonable folks who, will listen. I'm obviously one of them, so I'm a little biased in that comment, but, I think that the time has come that we as a town, need to make reasonable public access to Lake Shirley. We pay for the dam, our tax dollars go to that. I'd be happy to throw in money to the LSIC if that's what it would need to have better public access there. I just think we're at this point, we need to have meaningful public access, and I do believe that includes having ADA access. So that is my public comment for that part, and I am going to mute myself, and when Parks comes on, I may have a Parks comment.
All right, thank you, Ms. Menard. Do we have anyone in the room that would like to make a public comment? Sir, please come forward and be sure to state your name and address.
My name is George App, 28 Oak Ridge Road.
If you wouldn't mind just repeating that at the microphone.
Sure. George App, 28 Oak Ridge Road.
Thank you.
I am a member of LIC, the LSIC, also a resident across the lake, not directly impacted by a boat launch in the sense of people parking on my lawn and my street and potentially double sides of the road. But I do know many of the residents on that side of the lake, and I do frequent that side. And many people hold, like many other residents in Lunenburg, hold gatherings in the summer, as you can imagine, with many guests that park on the street. I think it's a fair assumption that most people in a town or any public place would be able to park in front of their house and have guests park in front of their house without much blockage from other reasons or other things. And as far as the town paying for the dam, I heard that comment. I don't know what the town pays to the dam. I'm not familiar with that, but I do know what Lake Shirley invests, the LCIC invests into the control of invasive weeds, the management of the drawdown, the constant effort by the residents on the lake to try to make sure that conservation of that property is well maintained. And yeah, it's a public lake, but we're also part of the public, and we actually live on that lake. And to a couple of other points made earlier, yes, Stump Cove is extremely shallow. It's not unless the town wants to dredge it, but it's not a super access really, even for anything other than a very small kayak. I wouldn't attempt anything. But I do know in the past, there's been some large groups that have tried to attend Shady Point. They've gotten that under control, but they were parking up and down Reservoir Road, Fire Road, accessing other people's docks and getting picked up by jet skis. There's a lot of things. Shady Point polices the people coming in and out, if you will. They actually pay for police patrols on the weekends. We do have environmental police that come, and I think they come on their own accord, but Lunenburg police are usually hired by Shady Point to help mitigate the no-wake zones and, just people acting unsafe, or if you will. And they pay attention to what's on boats. What are we looking at? What do we see coming into the lake? An unattended boat ramp does not have that. And we know invasive weeds is a big problem all over our country in fresh waterways. If it's not maintained, it becomes a huge, huge issue very, very quickly. In fact, 2 years of wet weather, minimal drawdowns, we've had to spend a lot more money on weed control. So my only comments from my fellow lake residents to the board is just to simply say, we're taking our money and our time to maintain the lake so that when, I would say on a given Sunday, given Sunday, Saturday, there's as many people at Shady Point as there are lake residents. I think that's a pretty fair share to the public. They might be private, but they're saving the town thousands of dollars because they are policing the lake. They're policing the public access to the lake by offering many people from all walks of life the opportunity to come and enjoy a great day on a beautiful lake. So I think when we look at that and we say, hey, we're not open to the public. Well, we are very much open to the public. To say it's access through private land, I would disagree with that. I would say the town has a business there that pays taxes, pays to police the lake, pays to allow people to come and enjoy a great day. There's plenty of access to that lake. If you want to pay $5 so that you can pay for that staff that also pays for the Lunenburg Police. If they're not there, they're out there in their yellow jerseys on their boats, watching, burning their fuel, taking their time, paying those people, picking up the trash, disposing of it accordingly. Our concerns are who's doing all that, and then if we're going to continue to pay for the weed control, then not the town. I would strongly oppose any further opportunity to access the lake other than through Shady Point. And I would think the town, this board, and other people should recognize that that is a high-value business for the town, because it gives people access, and it costs the town nothing to do that. Whatever the dam is, if it's $10,000 a year, I can assure you that it's a small fraction of what it costs for public to access that lake today. And so we're happy to continue to maintain, we have people on the lake to maintain the dam. Whether they're paid or not, I don't know. But just thoughtful thinking of other people, and when you say the best for the public, Mr. Jeffries, it's for all the public, right? And large crowds or people gathering, and we've seen it happen. When there's an opportunity for access, someone's going to try to take it, and there's going to be issues, and we just don't want to deal with those issues. We just don't want them. If we for one, the lake residents would be happy to hand the cost of maintaining Lake Shirley over to the town and the rest of the town taxpayers. But the bottom line is we volunteer our money to do that, and I think we do a good job at it. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else in the room want to have a public comment before we go back to Zoom? This is the last call for public comments in the room.
Their hand up.
Yep, last call for comments in the room. All right, we're going to go to Alex on Zoom.
They had their hand up for a
Oh,
while.
I'm sorry, not Alex. We're going to go to David Ossoff and Renee Babin. I think that's what that says. Baboyne.
Oh, you did, okay, hi. Yes, we're actually at 46 Fire Road 12, so we are direct abutters. A few years ago, we did hear of some plans starting to go through, and we did get a petition going at that time. Really haven't heard too much since, it's kind of strange that we haven't been notified as direct abutters. I just want to speak as far as our parcel of land that you're talking about on Fire Road 12 and Reservoir, Zero Reservoir. It is a very, it's pretty swampy. The land itself is very mushy. You would have to do a considerable amount of building up and changing of the natural landscape here to do that. And it is a beautiful wetland that you would be changing drastically. Also, our road is very small. We maintain it ourselves. We do pay to get it paved, and even then, my husband and I did an addition on our house a few years ago, and we are on the thinnest part between Stump Cove and the larger part of Lake Shirley. I guess, really, I think it is just such an ill-conceived notion to try to open up that spot to the public. even if you manage to cram, I think you might get 3 picnic tables over there, and the traffic, and we're the ones who, we have to, plow our road and everything else. I'm just wondering, and plus,
Erosion too.
we have a ton of erosion, yeah.
In the road constantly.
And I'm just saying that I really, we strongly oppose it moving forward. I think it's done great in the board's hands. I think that the board has, over the years, ruled correctly in allowing it to stay a very small corner of natural land. It's not a big corner. It's very small. And it has our mailboxes on it too. So, and like I said, it's very mushy. It's full of erosion. We ourselves had to build a lot of retaining walls just to hold up where our house is. And now you're talking about putting public access there, and the further erosion and not to mention safety issues obviously are a very big idea here. How will you patrol it? We can never even get a police officer down here. It's honestly, I just want to say that we directly oppose it, and we pray that the board continues its very sane trajectory in this issue. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. I'm going to go to Alex Y. Alex?
Hi, Alex Yauer, 226 Sunset Lane. First, I just want to speak my opposition, and my wife also is opposed to pursuing any development of either area. I'm not going to say anything about Parmenter Road, because I think if you look into it, you'll see that it's really not a viable spot to develop at all. But as far as Stump Cove, the the gentleman from the Open Space Committee said it was 12 acres. It's actually only 3.3 acres. And if that area does get developed and there's any kind of ramp at all for even a small boat, I don't live on that part of the lake, but I've had people come down Sunset. My neighbor has a ramp with a jet ski trailer and have tried to put jet skis in anywhere they can. And I think if there was any chance at all for something even as small as a jet ski trailer, there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences, and there's going to be a lot more problems with parking and safety. They said that they can control that with the size of the parking lot, like Fort Pond. I'm not sure if Fort Pond, what the speed limit is on Fort Pond, but maybe jet skis aren't even allowed in there. I'm not really sure, but if there's a place over on Stump Cove for someone to try to get a jet ski in, there's going to be a lot of cars parking everywhere, and I think it'll be a major safety issue. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And good to see you again as well. All right, do we have any other public comments on Zoom? Okay. I want to provide, before the select board offers any commentary, I want to provide the Parks Commissioners to respond to any of the concerns that were addressed by residents, any other additional information, and I do want to try to wrap up this conversation here in the next 15 minutes or so.
I cannot emphasize enough how important it is, how there are no plans, and we need to, and like Mike said earlier, we might look at this and we say, we don't think there is a good plan here. But what we're asking is for us to start exploring, to formalize, and put this, if there is no good plan, let's just put this to bed and be done. But there's been a lot of work that has been done before the Open Space Committee came here to ask for your support on these two parcels. And, and I hear you, Ms. Bellata brought up that there was an understanding that these pieces are going to stay the way they are. I'm very curious about where she got that. That's fairly new. The town is owed public access, and we're asking to explore that. That's it. So I hope we can get your support at town meeting.
Thank you.
Michael Ray, if I may,
Yes.
Karen Menard, from now wearing my Parks Commission hat. You know, this conversation of these properties actually started when I was on open space many years ago. I am very well aware of the legwork that our chair has mentioned this evening. There has been a lot of work done on it. You know, there was a question on what our plan was. Here's what our plan is. Public access. That's all we have. That's the plan that we have. We want to grant public access to the residents of our town to be able to utilize a body of water that is supposed to be public. Can it stay under the select board's control? Absolutely it can. If you want to maintain a park, then that's what you can do. I don't know if necessarily that's in the best interest of the select board, that's the time that they would want to spend. You know, but I think that the Parks Commission, as you know, I've been on this commission, I think, since 2017 or 2016. We listen to people. We are not looking to put in some sort of huge boat ramp that's going to allow yacht-sized boats to go in anywhere. You know, when I think public access, I think kayaks and a canoe, or, you know, something along those lines. Nothing yacht-like, no speedboat-like things. You know, that's not what I'm thinking of. But, you know, to explore and to be able to figure out what we could do there, I think it's important. And I understand that, you know, Mr. Alonso thinks that we can do it without having it transferred to the Parks Commission. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't want to be I don't want to be working on a project and spending time on something that will never ever be able to come to fruition because it's not our land. That would be like me coming in as the Parks Commission and saying, I want to put fields at TC Passios, here's a gigantic plan, and overriding everything that the select board has already, you know, done and the other user groups have already done for that piece of property. It just doesn't make sense to me to do it that way. You know, so again, I think that there's a ton of legwork that needs to be done on this. I think that there's a lot of listening we have to do, a lot of addressing of concerns, because I, for one, would not want to make anything worse. If you look at Marshall Park, for example, my big thing has been parking from the get-go, because I am tired of residents and out-of-town visitors who don't live in that area literally parking on residents' lawn on Chestnut Street when they can't find parking. I'm trying to solve that problem. I'm not going to, you know, support a project that's going to go in anywhere over near Lake Shirley that's going to cause additional problems for our residents. So there's a lot of legwork, and we may find that we can't do anything with either one of these properties, or we can't do anything that makes good public sense to do at those properties. But I think to not even take the opportunity to try to do that, I think that would be a shame for the Parks Commission not to be able to investigate that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any additional comments from the Parks Commissioners this evening? Mr. Lockwood, I see you came in late. Thank you for taking your hat off. Do you have a public comment? No. All right. To the board, any final comments or comments? We can just have this conversation, but we'll start with Selectman Imke.
Yeah, so firstly, the one property, we don't have a clear title, so I'm not sure that anything could be done or should be done until we do have a clear path forward there. I agree with Mr. Alonso. I have a reluctance to transfer property without knowing what that property is going to be used for. I know the Parks Commission feels like it's a bit of a catch-22. They need the transfer of the property in order to investigate what the possibilities are, but the statement was also made that they can learn very quickly that nothing can be done after a survey or engineering study or something along those lines. So if we could get to a fast no, without transferring property, I think that could be a quick decision. I haven't been over. I've been to Shady Point, but I haven't been to the other two properties that have been discussed tonight. So I do know, living on a lake, I know there is, when you're talking about even kayak launching and canoe, putting any kind of watercraft into a lake, the invasive weed issue is not trivial. There is overhead associated with, monitoring access to lakes when it comes to invasive weeds especially. And then there's overhead of, if you're going to have a public picnic area or something, the ADA compliance, the restrooms and things like that, trash, security, all of that. So once you start, digging into the weeds a bit, I think it's not a very simple, transfer property will make it, look nice and a nice place and then be done with it. I think there's a lot of fine points to consider, and I think that's, I think that's, as of now, without actually seeing the property, that's kind of where my head's at the moment.
Thank you, Selectman Imke.
I'll just reiterate, for me, the question before us was the transfer, that the Open Space Committee recommends transferring it. Everybody got into the weed, pardon the pun, got into the weeds of the, what's the plans and, where people are going to park and how many people are going to pick up that's way down the road to me. It's like, do I transfer it? And I don't have enough information to warrant, there's enough information in a exploratory of the two properties that could be done without transfer to come up to whether any of it is even feasible to begin with. And then by the time it's feasible, there'll be at least some kind of basic outline of what is feasible to say why we should transfer. I'm not, in and of itself, I'm not against transferring it, but I think it's premature to know it. And I want to say, as someone who moved here in 1998 and saw all three lakes, I agree, if there's a way to have public access to those people who say Shady Point is public access, I would disagree. It's not public access. It is a place that gives access to the public, which is different than public access by definition. So I'm for it if it can be done, but I'm not willing to transfer things prematurely until somebody can say even that we have the title, we have the space. This is a basic outline of what we can look at. Like that, we have to get to that point. And I'm not talking about full-fledged engineering diagrams and drawings. I'm talking about getting an idea of what the land is, how much of it is wetlands. I asked about plot plans and I got told 12 acres, and then I looked it up while I was, this long conversation, it's 3.3 acres, it's the Stump Cove one, and it's not even like one big property. It's like a loop around here and a spur out to the side. So, again, I think it's premature, and at this point, I wouldn't be inclined to transfer.
Mr. Franco.
Yeah, I think I need a map, lot plans, and a boots-on-the-ground narrated site walk. It's just very difficult to envision this, and a narrated site walk where we sort of go out there and with residents from the local area, but also parks and open space, and hear sort of a vocalization. I mean, not a formal thing, just like over here, we could have parking, and here's where you would launch small craft. It's just very difficult to envision without getting out there, and I like the site walk. I'm all about the site walk. So if that could be arranged, I think that would really greatly inform this whole conversation. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Franco. I have a couple comments. We were kind of in a cycle with open space where we were transferring a lot of property to conservation, and I finally started speaking up in opposition to it. Not that I don't support land going into conservation, but I think that when we look at the land that is under the care and custody of the select board, we have to envision that our government will be here for generations to come. And so we have to have purpose with what we're holding land for. Where are we going to have our future fire station in 400 years from now? That you need to set aside the land today for that. And so I think that some of the land that we have, especially the large parcels, we need to have a pretty specific purpose for them, for why we're holding them before we move them in that direction. Nonetheless, I'm inclined to support the request coming from the Parks Commissioners, and I will walk through why. I agree, first, with the request that we've already said. I agree that we need more information, that we need to, with these presentations, that we typically look for site maps, we typically want to see a visualization. I believe that the Parks Commissioners already have the authority, with this being town property, to explore this in more depth without there being a transfer of care and custody of the property. But I think that I trust, I'm a retired soldier and I'm also a man of faith, and I trust heavily that the American government system, the system we have in our town, is the best form of government for our people. I honestly believe that. We are as close to a true democracy as you can get. Nothing happens without a lot of input from the public, and nothing happens without the vote from the public. We know that we're a community that's made up of 3 lake communities, and as well as a lot of things that aren't lake communities, but we have 3 lake communities that are here. I don't want to say we're made up of 3 lake communities. We are a community that has 3 lake communities. And 2 of those communities have somewhat of associations. Lake Shirley acts as somewhat of an association, and Hickory Hills very much so is an association. The benefit of associations are email lists, which means you can contact 300, 400 people with the click of a button. We do not have that power to do that anywhere else in town. So the ability to get residents to come together for any particular purpose, we have to explore every mean possible. But there's a huge benefit to living on Lake Shirley and a huge benefit to living on Hickory Hills, is that there's email communication, there's this sense of neighborhoodness that comes together. And there's a lot of positives that come through that. The negatives, though, are that on everyone else is when it comes to town meeting, it is not hard to send an email to Hickory Hills and you can guaranteed get about 150 people to show up and vote against whatever it is you're trying to move forward if they don't support it. That's more people than normally show up at town meeting. And the same is true for Lake Shirley. So these things can't get through unless they have the vote and support of all the people. I strongly believe that our government system that we operate off, that if we move forward in the direction of saying, let's work to increase public access, that the result that will come out of the end of this must be and can only be a result that the overwhelming majority will support. I believe in the American way. I believe that we have the capability of doing it. And I believe that the concerns that we've heard tonight are concerns that can be considered. 51 Parmenter probably isn't the best place, but is that a parcel that we can say, hey, you can sign up for timed access for a kayak? If that's something you wanted to do, that we limit it to certain times, that you're mindful of residents on Friday nights, on Saturdays having parties, and so you make it a Monday through Friday during the summer. There are ways you can do this that's respectful to the people who are nearby, and that has minimal impact to the people, to the residents who are living there. The same thing is true for the other parcel. That there are probably ways to do it, but then there's a third option here too, which is an agreement with Shady Point. That maybe if they already have the infrastructure in place, maybe there's something we can tap into there that will improve the access. But ultimately, we have a lot of residents who live in a town that has 3 lakes in it, and they have no access really to 2 of them. And Lake Shirley is a big lake. Will it benefit all of our residents at large to have access to Lake Shirley? Of course it would. But can it be done respectfully? It must, right? It must. And I think that I would encourage the Parks Commissions to move in that direction. The best thing is to work with the abutters, to work with residents. Some people are just always going to be opposed, right? But most people are reasonable. Most people are reasonable. When you drive down the street, and I say this all the time, when you drive down the street, there's a reason why people aren't playing bumper cars every day, People care about their own life, they care about other people's lives. There's a reason why in a country with this many guns, more guns than people, we don't have mass shootings every day. I'm not saying we don't have too many, but there's a reason why we don't have them every single day. Because most people are respectful to other people. I trust the process. And as a retired soldier who defended the process for 20 years, most or about half of my life, I trust the process. I trust that we can get to a result that improves the access and mitigates the concerns of neighbors, and that we don't end up with a situation where 45 Parmenter has 20 cars parked in front of her house, every day of the week. But I have to imagine that the resident who bought 45 Parmenter for a pretty penny is probably not going to have as much of a concern if someone showed up, Monday through Friday, between the hours of 9 and 3 p.m. to launch a kayak, right? That's probably not as concerning. And so there are ways we can get to and I'm not putting words in the mouth of 45 Parmenter of Ms. Wolfram, but there are ways you can do this. Specifically, lake maintenance has come up. I'm not in favor of the town taking over the maintenance of Lake Shirley. I believe government should only do those things that we cannot do better ourselves. And Lake Shirley Corporation is doing a fine job of managing their interest on Lake Shirley. I do not think we need to step in and take over. However, if we are improving access to the lake, we will need to contribute. And right now, we don't contribute anything. So we will need to contribute money. That's a fair way. And that's a fair solution. If the town's forking over $50,000 or $100,000 a year and taking off a sixth or a third of the cost of the neighbors, those are things that can be, and you're doing it in a respectful way, we can end up at a place that we all want to be at. Introduction of invasives. This is something that's true, that's everywhere. So there are ways you mitigate it. There are ways you can mitigate it. One option is that you create a storage on site for people's kayaks and canoes. That's one option. You don't allow things to come in from other lakes. So there's a lot of things that need to get explored. We are far away from a transfer of property today. But there's a lot of things that I think we're moving in the right direction. As a next step, I would encourage the Parks Commissioners to work with the town manager to schedule with us a site walk. I think that we should invite representation from Lake Shirley. I think that as we go through this walk, that we should hear the concerns, that we should see them. Site walks have a lot of value. I think we'll be in a better position to be able to say as a board, hey, maybe this site won't work, or maybe there's minimal things that can happen here. Maybe this isn't going to work at all. I would encourage the park commissioners to do that, to also prepare something in writing that we can share on the website, so that residents who maybe couldn't attend tonight and have questions down the line can look at kind of what this preliminary vision is, what's being explored, to offer commentary. But this is a public process. We only get there with the public's input, and all things are for the benefit of the public. I think we can move forward in a direction that gets us to where we need to be at. That's respectful to all the concerns that we heard tonight. Not one person who lives on Lake Shirley spoke in favor of this. Not one. That is, in total, if I remember my count right, about 200 votes against. So the challenge is, how do you get people to vote for something? Most people are going to vote for, in my opinion, their neighbors having a good quality of life. Most people want that because they want it for themselves. They want it for themselves. I want a good life, so I'm not going to hurt someone else's ability to have one too. I think we can get to where we need to be. I would encourage a sense of open-mindedness, a sense of participation, with the understanding that no things are decided. That just because government explores something does not mean the fix is in, does not mean that we're going to end up there. These are conversations that are worth having. Let's have it. Let's see where we land, and let's make a decision at that point. And that's what I would propose as a path forward. I want to give Anna the opportunity to respond to the board's comments tonight, as well as anything else, and then also to adjourn your meeting.
Yes, I need to adjourn the meeting. With all due respect, like you said, up to now, we have had several meetings. And I hope you understand the process that we are going through this with the open space and parks. We are not taking any steps on developing this process until the Open Space Committee tells us this is the 2 parcels they recommend, because that would be us stepping outside the boundaries of what the process was.
Yes.
So I hope that is understanding for that. So we have not had meetings to entertain ideas or explore anything because, 1, the land is not ours. 2, we are obeying the process of allowing the Open Space Committee to go through these 3+ years of studying and recommendations, and then come here. And I guess we do need town meeting to approve this. But I wanted you to have something in mind. Unfortunately, and Ms. Bellata said we were not welcomed into the meetings. And I take real issue with that, because just like today, not a single moment any of the residents have shown up and said, you know, we did give you access, public access to this. I understand the job you have to do, because that's it. We see this as our job. I understand the job you have to do. Let's look at this and work together to figure out what it is. A lot of the things that they have said, I agree, but they are not problems that cannot be solved. And they're not willing to entertain anything. It's just no, no, no. So I don't think this is on the Parks Commission or the Open Space Committee. I think this is on the residents to really fully acknowledge that this was part of the deal and get on a conversation with us about how can this happen, should this be happening, and explore the ideas with us. I mean, some of the things that we have heard, it's just like, really, like, I mean, I'm sure we're going to have a debriefing tomorrow in our Parks Commission's meeting, but, you know, they are well documented. Like, we cannot possibly do anything that's not handicapped. Now, open space handicap is very different than handicap on the public building. It's just how it is. Safety, we already talked with the chief, but not a single resident has come to our meetings wanting to work with us, fully acknowledge that the town residents, the ones that are paying $10,000 a year to maintain that dam, actually have a right to use that. And they have not been on board, so I invite them to actually show up to our meetings and participate on their meetings. On how can this happen? You know, what information can they give to us, because we're not lake people, that we would learn so that when we make plans, we're making good plans versus no. That's not a starting point of any conversation, and that's all we have had. I would like to close the meeting so I don't have to come back here. Can I get a motion to close the meeting?
I'll make a motion to close the Parks Commission meeting at 9:15 p.m.
All right, got to do a roll call. Karen Menard?
Aye.
Chris? Colleen? Anita? All right, there's meeting's closed. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
you have something, Mike?
I just want to add two things. I want to apologize, I did misspeak about the acreage. I work professionally on tons of parcels, and I had 12 acres roaming in my head about something, and you're right, it's like 3.3 acres parcel. And the second thing is, if you do a site visit, I'd like to have the Open Space Committee be a major participant in that, because
course.
we've been the ones down there, know the area, we've got representatives from all the other boards. So I'd appreciate us
Absolutely.
being involved in that as well.
I should have said open space instead of...
That's okay.
But it should be all three of us.
All right.
All three of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight. I want to thank all the residents as well who took the time out of their evening to either be here or join via Zoom. I think that we've demonstrated I think this board has consistently demonstrated, in boards prior to now, that we're here to work for the people. And we listen to the concerns of residents. I know that many people in Lake Shirley went through a tax concern this year, and I have to imagine that we were able to manage that effectively enough in a way that you guys are back before us to resolve another concern. Certainly, things are hard to get through, we know that, but I think as a community, we get through them. You know, we have the concerns, we have the legal concerns, we have the petition of opposition. I think we know what the public is at, and my take is I also want to be mindful of, you know, what is our town going to be in 20 years from now? That if we don't start mixing the people who live on lakes with the people who don't, that we're going to be a community divided rather than a community united. And so it is important that we have access on Lake Whalum, on Lake Shirley, to members of the public, but that we do it in a way that's respectful to people's home values, that's respectful to what people bought when they bought into buying a home in Lunenburg, that they didn't necessarily buy into, you know, being on some public lake that had 1,000 people on it, but at the same time, it is a public lake. And so how we do these things, how we move in this direction, I think that if we can get people who are saying no, no, no to yes, and here's how, that's what we have to listen to. Because the people who are no, 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 and can get to yes, and here's how, are often going to be the most reasonable people who understand that there's a middle ground between their current way of life and what we want all residents who live in Lunenburg to be able to experience. And I will acknowledge that as a resident in Lunenburg, who's been here since I was 10 years old, that, you know, I don't have access to really the lakes. Lake Whalum, yes, but I mean, it's small. I'd love to go. And so, you know, I think it would be a good thing to kind of get that culture as a community where we do have the ability, but I also want to be clear that we need to do it in a way that makes it open only to Lunenburg residents, and that we don't need to turn these lakes into communities of Fitchburg and Leominster and whoever else wants to show up, that this needs to be a Lunenburg resident benefit, and a Lunenburg resident benefit only. So, we'll get there. Thank you for your time. While Zoom is changing, let's pause.
I don't have a town manager.
All right, we'll do that one. We'll keep.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Mr.
Jeffries,
thank you for your service.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you just for hearing us.
Of
and-
course.
And collaborating. It was a different process tonight than I have been. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're just pausing for those at home in the room, just to give residents the opportunity to step out. Ezekiel, I will also let you know, I see you're still with us. You do not have to remain on the meeting if you have other plans tonight.
Leave it all. Leave it all. I didn't drive, so I couldn't.
Thank you, I appreciate that, but I'll stick around.
Might be interested in the capital plan.
Yeah. All right, I need some water. So I'm going to turn to the town manager. We are going to skip a town manager report. We're also going to skip bylaws tonight in light of the time, and we'll keep everything else in motion. So we're going to go to the town manager on her presentation of the capital plan. To the town manager.
Mr. Chair, and I'll share screen. All right, so this is a presentation on the fiscal '25 capital plan, as well as a look ahead, the outgoing 10 years for capital needs. So we'll start off with what qualifies a capital project. The town's policy on capital expenditures, which is under the Select Board's Financial Policy, Section 3.02, defines capital projects as items that cost $20,000 or more and have a useful life of 3 years or longer. The Massachusetts Association of Town Finance Committees defines capital projects as major, non-recurring expenditures for one of the more following purposes: acquisition of land for a public purpose, construction of a new facility or external expansion, or major rehabilitation of an existing one, any planning, feasibility, engineering, or design study related to a capital project or capital improvement program consisting of individual projects, equipment for public improvements when they are first constructed, such as furniture, office equipment, or playground equipment, and major equipment which is expensive and has a relatively long life, such as fire apparatus, garbage trucks, which doesn't apply in Lunenburg, and construction equipment. The capital planning process is a multi-step process. First, the Capital Planning Committee creates a capital plan that consists of all capital requests submitted by each department for the next 10 fiscal years. The Capital Planning Committee's first meeting to begin the fiscal '25 capital planning process was on August 3rd. The capital planning documents were sent to departments in September, and the Capital Planning Committee met with departments from late October until the end of November, beginning of December, I believe. The town manager uses the same software for capital request as used for budgeting, and that is ClearGov, and all the relevant information was submitted through this platform. The data collected is based on the UMass Collins Center capital planning documents that include various categories, such as effectiveness of government, the effect on operating costs, effect on revenues, whether the project is mandated by state or federal government, whether grant funds are available, how the project contributes to such things as economic growth, public safety, public health, and education. Each category receives a rating and an overall score based on the aggregate score of all the categories. The higher the rating, the higher the priority. The Capital Planning Committee evaluates capital requests based on the responses to these categories, and then as a group, The committee reviews the merits of all the projects, and each member submits their ranking of each project, and these are averaged to achieve a composite ranking. This year's process included prioritizing 35 capital project requests, and the prioritized list was submitted to me on December 24th. The town manager may modify this list of capital projects as part of the proposed budget for the next fiscal year, and this capital budget is presented to the annual town meeting as one article and amended as necessary to reflect the will of town meeting and voted on. And that vote, just to clarify, is staying within the scope of the article is a full dollar amount for that project, or for the whole capital plan. It can be decreased, but not outside of that scope increase. The preliminary capital plan reflects the same top 10 projects the capital planning committee provided to me, with differences in the prioritization of some of the projects. So we'll look at those, the full list. The full list of 35 capital project requests totaled $3,474,767.98 for fiscal '25. And this list, this presentation is also up on the town website for anyone that wants to look at these individual projects, and all the capital planning presentations as well by the departments. These next two slides are just a breakdown by category. So looking at fiscal '25, IT had 2% of the request, the police department had 6%, the fire department had 9%, facilities and parks had 21%, the school had 25%, and public works had 37%. I broke this also out by subcategories by department, because that was a discussion during the capital planning process of the subcategories within departments. So DPW is broken out by public works, cemetery, and infrastructure. And the facilities and parks is broken out as well on this slide. I show those individual totals for each of those divisions within that department.
If I can ask a clarifying question. The requests that are coming from the school, are they also in line with category-wise? Are they facility-related requests?
Those aren't broken down, but you can say by looking at the list whether they're facilities or not.
I saw the list,
Yeah.
and I think it's mostly, but okay.
But these, because our departments contain one or more divisions within them, that's why, and that was the discussion piece. I mean, you can also, infrastructure, it affects not just DPW, it affects the whole town. So the recommendation tonight is to, at this point in time, knowing our current available funds for the capital plan, is to fund the first 10 prioritized projects. And as I stated before, I have the same top 10 projects as the capital planning committee, deviated from the prioritization number on 3 projects, and that was the Northfield Culvert project, the marked police vehicle replacement for the K-9 cruiser, and the marked police vehicle for the traffic vehicle. The funding sources being recommended at this point in time are utilization of free cash and unexpended capital. So as I said, there is a lot of information on the website with the individual departments' presentations, but I'll walk through the top 10 priorities. The top priority is for the public safety radio system. This is phase 2 of the radio infrastructure, and this will replace all the obsolete equipment that we have currently, and that includes repeaters and antennas, and adding a simulcast site on Chase Road water tank. This original system was installed around 2009, 2010, and the manufacturer has discontinued the model line, and it is difficult to find replacement parts. These maps show how the coverage would change once the new system is in place. Priority 2 is for town-wide keying, card access, and alarm system upgrades to all town buildings. This does not include school. This is related to town buildings. And this would include exterior door hardware, and it would create a master key system for all the exterior doors, add on an electronic key card access system with integrated security alarms. This would allow for key control and tracking, which improves security and access control, and the centralization of key cards and access. The system is expandable, so if we eventually wanted to upgrade all the interior locks, it would have that capacity. And it's also would use that same type card system. The upgrade does include the public safety building, but their system would continue to be maintained by them.
As you're looking into, do you happen to know if, what they modeled it off of in terms of, like, was it Verkada or?
This is key card. It's,
Verkada's cameras and
yeah.
key cards.
Mhm.
But do you happen to know what he modeled it off of?
I'd have to ask but I think I have the quote.
Okay. I note because there's only a couple of companies that provide the integrated platform that does both card access and cameras, and it's far better to integrate it into one platform. And the amount of money is enough. Okay. I'll send specifically to Chris when he's back.
Priority 3 is for Northfield Culvert, which is at Kelly's Pond. This is for the construction portion. The engineering portion was in the fiscal '24 capital plan, so that paid for the engineer plans and contract specifications, so we can put this project out to bid. This is for the construction cost to replace this culvert.
Sorry, excuse my ignorance here. Where is this? I don't-
Northfield Road,
Yeah, but where?
Yeah, but like,
right when you,
Very close to the
Yeah.
golf course.
so when you cross 13, like, is it right, is that thing right on the left? Like, right when you're at 13, or is it
No,
It's-
really close? to
yeah,
the
it's on
bit
both
further,
sides. You can see
yeah.
it from both sides of Northfield
Right.
if you go down that road.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'm confused, but I'll have to drive it. I feel like I know, I live right around, okay.
Yeah.
I just don't know where this is either. I don't remember there being a pond. But it could just be the image. I know, anyway. Is it this, like, as Lou was saying, if I can just be a little clearer. So as you cross over 13 going towards Fitchburg, there's that first body of water you hit as you kind of come down the hill. And then as you go up to go to the golf course and you start coming down again, you hit another body of water at the other end of Northfield.
It's on a low end of Northfield, so if you're, because I visited the site.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I'll take an individual
Yeah.
site
Yeah.
ride.
It's-
Yeah,
yeah.
out there and check it out. All right, thank you.
Priority 4 is for Turkey Hill Elementary School, the ADA study for renovations and assessment and schematic design for $275,000. This project will support hiring an engineer, designer to develop a study to include the following areas: identify any immediate ADA noncompliance, identify the architectural barriers to meet current ADA regulations, prescribe necessary modifications to specific areas, which is general access, bathrooms, doorways, elevator, and classrooms, replacement of major systems such as HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and building envelope, construction plan and schematic designs for proposed work, and estimated cost for renovation of the building. This will provide important information as the town considers the potential rehab of this facility using MSBA funding. Priority 5 is for a replacement for the marked K-9 cruiser for $92,211. And this would replace the current 2015 K-9 Tahoe with a new Ford Expedition SSV. And the current mileage on the K-9 vehicle is 83,000 miles, and this vehicle would be sold once decommissioned. Priority 6 is for library security cameras, Phase 1, which is for $36,000. The library security camera system is currently running on 2 separate systems, both of which are over their reasonable lifespan and need to be replaced to avoid failure. Phase 1 would be to replace one of the systems with an improved quality camera system that does not require on-site maintenance and upgrades and can be added onto in the future. That's for $36,000. Priority number 7 is for replacement of the marked traffic cruiser for $73,627. And this would replace the 2019 Tahoe that currently has 102,816 miles. And this would also be sold once it's decommissioned, the current vehicle. Priority 8 is for the Turkey Hill Elementary School installation of 3M window safety film for $33,569, and this is to put safety film on the inside of all the exterior doors with glass and inside of all the large windows on the first floor, which are accessible. Priority 9 is for security camera upgrades at town buildings for $36,450, and the goal of this is to create a ubiquitous security system, and this would include Town Hall, Eagle House, DPW, and Ritter Building. Town Hall and Eagle House would see replacement of existing equipment as well as new cameras. The existing systems that are in the buildings are dated, difficult to manage, and lack scalability. Priority number 10 is for the Wallace Park basketball and tennis courts for $70,000, and this is to resurface the courts to avoid further degradation of the courts. They've received a lot of use by the community. If you go by there any day of a normal week, they're heavily used by the community. So the next slide shows a list of the remaining projects. So as I said earlier, there are 35 projects in all, and the remaining projects total $2,157,648. Again, this is a slide just to recap my recommendation tonight. So when we look ahead at the future years, and I've created a link to a document that shows all the projects that were submitted for fiscal 25 through 34, and that's up on the website for anyone to look at. We have about $39.5 million in all in total requests over the next 10 years at this point. But that also includes $14.8 million in renovations, Turkey Hill, and $4.8 million in renovations and repairs to TC Passios. So totaling $19 million out of that 39.5, almost half of that amount of request. And that's at this point in time, as we most of us know that have gone through the capital planning process. 10 years is a long way to look out. If you'll look at the 10-year projection, or not projection, plan of request, you'll see that there's a couple of years, there's very little if you go out to the beyond 5 years. It becomes more clear for departments, I think, within a 5-year time span. And new things come up over time as well. So we know that this is a snapshot in time right now. But what I'm pointing out is out of this, almost half of the requests that we have, we know that this would require borrowing for the town. And not just funding through what we've been using for sources of funds, of free cash, regular tax revenue, and unexpended capital and special purpose. So looking at a 10-year projection, what I used as assumptions, because I created a document that outlined different sources of funds for the next 10 years for the projects that we have know at this snapshot in time. So the assumptions used are that we should use as a baseline for our raise and appropriation amount 2% of our annual omnibus budget amount and increase that by 2.5% each year. Use free cash of $1 million as a baseline, increase that by 2% each year. Use special purpose stabilization funds in fiscal 27, 28, and 32. And that would be for when fire trucks and DPW, just one piece of DPW equipment is identified. And what I did was, it's based on continuing to deposit funds into the special purpose stabilization account. So in that first year, fiscal 27, we see 1.582 million in use of special purpose stabilization funds. 1.4 approximately of that is a fire truck that's on the plan, and the remainder is for a piece of DPW equipment. And so the other out years, we would continue to deposit ones that we don't draw on the special purpose stabilization. We would then start contributing again the following year after drawing on it to build that up to a point where we can purchase the next piece of equipment. So given if we continue to deposit 250 or with incremental inflation added to that, we'll be able to fund fiscal 27, 28 out of the special purpose stabilization for those pieces of equipment and deposit after that until 32 and draw on it again. This assumption also recommends that we borrow for the TCP and Turkey Hill Elementary School renovations through exempt and non-exempt borrowing, and that projects that do not get funded each year will be pushed out to the next fiscal year. So although you see on this slide that's up on the screen, deficits in fiscal 25 through fiscal 29, that's using those assumptions and baselines, but going to the out years, in the end, there's a surplus. But as I said, this again is a snapshot in time. New things may arise in capital requests. For instance, the difference between the total this year and the total last year is about $4 million more in requests. And this is a link to that document, so that shows, I broke it out by categories of raise and appropriate, free cash, and unexpended capital for projects, separated out projects that would be general fund debt, so that'd be regular debt that's non-exempt that we take on within the operating budget, and exempt debt. So the next steps this process would be to reevaluate the capital plan from now until town meeting to see if additional funding can go towards the fiscal 25 capital projects that were not funded. So we would work down that list of prioritization. And if more funding came available, work down that list. Revisit our funding sources during the budget process as more information becomes known. This may alter amounts of sources of funding and include funding through tax revenue. Continue to plan on using the special purpose stabilization in future years that there are large vehicle and equipment needs, unless there are sufficient funds through other regular sources, such as tax revenue, free cash, and unexpended capital. And the big elephant in the room, Turkey Hill and TCP and the future town office spaces are critical impact to capital planning and our debt planning. And that's the presentation. Any questions?
I'd like to first thank you, Heather, for the incredible amount of work that went into preparing this. I know how much time it takes. Well, I don't personally know, but I can imagine from the product how much time it takes to work through this, to be able to kind of get this visualization. And we know from our experience working with you that, your planning here generally is exceptional. So it's not like it puts us in a good direction, it puts us in a great direction. One of the concerns about Turkey Hill and TC Passios, I think from just a strategic perspective, is that, we should tie those projects together. And I think that the initial intent was to delay, we had on the forecast, basically replacement of Turkey Hill. And in conversation with building design, municipal building design committee and school committee, the approach what has been that, we have a problem with what to do with old schools. And so if they shore up the schools, that way when it's getting transferred to the town, that there's number one, a disposition, and number two, that the building doesn't need a new roof and a new boiler and a new electrical system and a new plumbing system, then it makes the building better to use. And I know that part of the current thought process coming out of the school committee, I'm sure Mr. Alonso is aware of this given their presentation in capital planning, that part of their thought process is how do we get this building to last us for at least another 10 years, and then also be in a better position to get transferred over to the town if it's decided that they want to build a new school and the town could have a better purpose. And the appeal for the Municipal Building Design Committee is that we would much rather have Turkey Hill than TC Passios. And I know that Chris Ruth, through his work, has kind of come to the conclusion that we probably would be better off taking that approach. That's something he's communicated to us, at least, was that, TC Passios is a pretty poor condition to rehabilitate. But this is just a difficult year for us to, given the tax situation. I'm concerned that if we go to the taxpayers this year and say, hey, let's borrow some money, and then go to the next year and say, hey, let's borrow some money, that neither one of them is going to happen. And it's also that, we don't have a problem or hesitance supporting schools, and we need to, in my opinion, strategically tie them together as a building improvement plan that addresses both school and municipal needs. So that way we're not constantly kind of pitted one versus the other, A or B, but we work together. And that, of course, is going to be a heavy weight on the plan. I think we'll be at a position where Municipal Building Design Committee probably could go before the town this spring, but it looks like the schools are going to need to wait till next year. And it seems as if, strategically that we'll work, my comment here is that we'll work with them to make sure that we land at a dollar amount that's going to resolve both needs. And that we will try to take the approach working with you of what's the best combined approach, or if we address municipal needs and a portion of the school's request, can that get us at least more time till we have more capacity to borrow more money? So I know that, we're really committed on municipal building design to work with schools. They have been really receptive to the input we've offered. We have fully support their 275 that's in the plan that will help them get the numbers that they need to get and have a vision for what the building can be, and then address the concerns that we have, which is how do we then take that building potentially in 10 years from now and do to that what we wanted to do at TC Passios. So long-winded comment, but I think this all moves us in the right direction, and I will make sure I'm doing my work to work with you to help resolve that kind of unknown in there. But again, thank you, and I think this is a really bright capital plan, and I want to thank you and the members of the Capital Planning Committee for all their work.
I want to thank them as well. We put a lot of hours and time in since the summer, so it's much appreciated.
I agree. I think it's an excellent plan, and, I'm sorry that, again, the town is facing a year because of, what happened this year, that we're looking at less to be spending in capital plan than historically. Hopefully, we can drum up something in the difference, but, onward and upward. I guess all those bigger projects that were mentioned are going to be kind of governed by the debt service, which I'm sure in the budget, when we get the budget forecast and the budget plan, financial forecast and the budget plan, we'll know more of then.
If I could ask the booth to pin Renee onto our screen, Selectman Imke, that'd be helpful.
Just made me think of something that was in one of my slides, but I don't think I pointed out clearly, was the historical spending on capital. Both the 3-year and 5-year average has been around 1.5 million. So.
Selectman Emke?
I just want to reiterate my thanks to the town manager and capital planning committee for all the work, and the department heads also in putting the presentations together with the requests.
Good point.
I have nothing beyond thanking you for the presentation and also capital planning for the work. No questions.
All right. Well, I know we're in the heavy part of the year for you, Madam Town Manager, so thank you for the work. I know you're putting in time on the weekend, so again, thank you. So we have 2 more things in a row for you to present, so I will well, probably 4 actually. So I will sit back and...
All right. So it's around a little beyond the time frame of when I give a update on my goals and where we're at.
I will take full responsibility for that. We did have this previously scheduled, and I did push it.
No.
Well, I think it's a contractual thing, so I probably have to say that.
Yes. So my first goal is, everyone's familiar with 925 Mass Ave, the old gas station. So I feel like significant progress has been made on that, on this goal particularly as well. The grant that I applied for through Mass Development, we received $25,000 for real estate technical assistance. I've worked with their Director of Site Planning on defining the scope of the projects, and they received a quote from BSC Group. And now that the scope's defined, the next step is for Mass Development to put together a grant agreement and then the delivery order to BSC Group. And it's anticipated we'll kick off this project for this portion of work at the end of the month, beginning of February. So this will be conceptual plans. There'll be some meetings with the select board. We'll be helping draft an RFP for this project. And the secondary action for this was to find available funding for any remaining contamination. And I did work with the EPA, and we received additional funding to remove the hydraulic lift, floor drains inside the building, and floor drain holding tank and related materials. And that was completed in November. Containers were removed in December. Goal number 2 is financial policies and procedures and long-term planning. The first action was to review and make recommendations to the select board on financial policies, create written financial administration procedure manual for employees that will formalize unwritten processes, and draft a process and checklist for the Board of Assessors and assessor staff to use. I applied for and received a community compact grant through the Division of Local Services. Their Financial Management Resource Bureau will be working with us to provide updated and additional financial policies, and these would ultimately be voted on by the board. The relevant staff, so all our financial team, we've met with DLS individually on January 4th to review the current processes, and they were also provided our current financial policies. I had previously drafted administration and procedural manual that covers such things as turnovers and requisitions, purchase orders, and also using their template through the Community Compact program. I did a preliminary draft using that template of all the financial policies. So I think they have a really good starting point, and it shouldn't be a huge heavy lift on their part given that background. For long-term staffing, that's in progress. This would be done in conjunction with the developing this year's budget. For culverts and bridges. The action item was to apply for a grant to create a culvert and bridge management plan, similar to the pavement management plan. Applied for the Community Compact Grant and received $25,000 for that. And the DPW director received 2 quotes and will be moving forward with the BSC group for that project as well. The third goal was for employee recruitment, recognition, and retention. The first action for recruitment, work with professional associations, state entities, and local colleges to advocate for improving the shortage of municipal employees. Through the Small Town Administrators of Mass Association I belong to, a letter was sent to Governor Healy that included requesting pathways for municipal positions. I sent this correspondence to our delegation in September about the same topic. And the assistant town manager participated in the lieutenant governor's tour of regions in the state to listen to town issues, and she brought this issue forward at that meeting as well. For retention, there's no update on the mission statement, getting input from employees at this point in time. Training, to create a standard training program for new employees and survey existing employees for training topics. Munis training has been identified as the key source, especially given the number of new employees we have in departments. Training, and it was timed around the migration point because we needed training on the upgraded version of Munis. So there was training offered to employees at that time. There were 3 days of training. And also we did Excel training for staff. So there's been 2 training sessions, a beginner and a intermediate, and then there'll be like power user and such in the spring. And recognition, there is no update at this time. I mean, the board is aware of the types of recognition that I've tried to do through town manager reports, as far as employee highlights, and working with Karen McCarthy, our IT administrative assistant, on putting out more social media information as well. And the assistant town manager and I are working right now with Capital Strategic Solutions on getting a newsletter off the ground. This is something the assistant town manager has wanted to do for a long time, but due to time hasn't been able to do. So we have a lot of ideas, but it will just helping get that off the ground and then taking it over at points. So I think that will be, I think, a really helpful tool for both employees, and eventually we want to launch it publicly so people are more aware of, and there's more transparency about the day-to-day activities. And this input would be individually from department heads, things that are going on in their department. So it'd be a monthly newsletter.
As you were going on, you got softer and softer.
Sorry.
Like listening harder and harder.
That was my intent.
Okay.
Or I'm just getting tired and harder.
Yeah, I was looking at the time, thinking we probably need to target a 10:30 stop here today.
Yeah. The handbook, are there any comments, or do you need me to?
No.
Okay.
I think that
I haven't reviewed it, so I have no comments.
Yeah, I think we should, we have it, it's being presented. I think that a good strategy for us is to have this at the beginning of our agenda next week, so that way we can just earnestly kind of walk through it, and we can just kind of trust that the members will read it in advance, so we can just pause on the sections, similar to how we do warrants, we're approving them, pause on the sections that members want to discuss.
I mean, I may be the lone dissenter, but I was thinking of going through it line by line.
I'm just going to sleep here.
You know, I mean, we don't always get residents here, so, you know, when we do, I think it's smart to kind of give them the time that they clearly want to get, and I know that impacts us further down the agenda.
It's good use of time.
Okay, so we have the handbook. let's put this closer to the beginning of the agenda next time. We'll probably just, we'll talk, but let's just get that earlier in the agenda.
Okay.
Next time, before we even get to regular old business, because I think we need to spend a bit of time on that. We're going to push bylaws again. It's our goal. We have a little bit more time before we have to put it on a warrant, and even still, we have more time. So now we are on ARPA distribution.
Okay. So I don't have, I put in what the approved projects were.
Yep.
That just document, so you could have that. I don't have a budget report on that. As you know, Karen said, limited time and higher priority things, so.
So I
that's
think
something.
if I.
But let me
Yep.
continue. So what I did, because I know the question was, and this wasn't raised to me through the organizations, which I would ask in the future that if you have a concern, come to me. I want to listen and hear the concern. I know it was sent through other channels. So what I did, because initially when Karen Brochu and I spoke about distribution of ARPA funds, and the best way to for accounting is to do a reimbursement model. That would be the cleanest way to see that those costs were being used for their purpose. But I know that we have a couple nonprofit organizations that do not have the budgetary capacity to do a reimbursement model. So what I did was created a grant agreement, and this can be used for all outside agencies. So the water district would be included in that model, and the other nonprofits. All the other people that are receiving, or groups that are receiving funding through the allocation are town entities, so it goes through the warrant process already, all their invoices. So the grant agreement the draft grant agreement is in your drive. And I modeled this off a couple of versions from other communities that have developed similar grant agreement through with private nonprofit groups. And let me just open it. So
there's three that we're talking about, the Lions Club, the Boys and Girls Club, and the Water District.
Correct.
Okay.
So, but if you'll look, there's an Exhibit A that's a grant plan, and there's two different forms, one for nonprofit and one for profit. So that would be the water district, because they do have a budget. So they would be a reimbursement model. The nonprofits would be receiving those funds directly, but there are reporting requirements. So they'd have to be reporting to us quarterly on those funds that have been expended.
I think there may, just like when we get grant money, then we can expend without an appropriation. You know this better than I, and that's what I'm asking. Do they run into a problem if they allocate or spend money without an allocation and then request reimbursement?
For the water district?
Yeah. Like, wouldn't they need to first even get approval by the district, whereas spending grant money is a whole different process in and of itself?
Their approval is through the grant agreement, essentially. So when we sign a contract with the state for any grant we receive, and different agencies are different. Some are reimbursement, some receive portions of funds like the Green Communities, and some are all upfront. But for a reimbursement model, we are allowed to, so the accountant sets up an account. You're able to deficit spend that account until you get that reimbursement.
I did take a look at that approach. I know that, I had talked about that a bit, and I think it's really good. I know that some of the nonprofits are really, the nonprofits in particular, are looking for the money, and so the sooner we can put it in their hands, the better. And so I think the agreement format that you propose was excellent. I didn't have any concerns about it.
You're a quick reviewer, then, like.
I looked at it again right before we came. I
Okay.
always check the meeting for the, I know that you put some stuff in,
Yeah.
right before the meeting.
This one I did right before.
Yeah, so I thought you did a great job.
Thanks. What I want to point out, and town council hasn't reviewed this either, so I would want him to, I'll send it to him tomorrow. But like that last provision, change in ARPA funding regulations, if there were any kind of change, we want it in writing that we could revoke funding if it's revoked from us, or definition of committal obligation. So just to make it, protect the town and protect the agency
Yeah.
given the funds.
think
Like, an example of that is the 9C cuts that were done. The call I was on Friday, there were obviously a lot of communities that had received earmarks this year. There were ones that were very upset, were ones that were already down the path, and it was 50% was now being cut from that earmark, where the communities that had already expended those funds aren't getting penalized. They're not taking 50% of that amount from them, so.
Okay. So, you mentioned that you're going to send this over to town council for
Yes.
review. And then we're also, so we'll keep this as a standing agenda item for next week as well. And then you also mentioned that we will get just kind of an update on any funds that have been expended to date, because we need to push these departments to spend this money. So anything that's been expended to date. And I'll start with Selectman Imke. Oh, and then the third thing, and I'm going to probably take some words out of Selectman Imke's mouth here, is we need to identify what to do about the remaining $58,000. Excuse me, that we have available, and I need to aggressively, and let me make a quick note to myself about the consultant that I had discussed with regard to the old dump and solar panels, and scheduling that gentleman for a presentation, because I think that would be about a $25,000 cost, $20,000 to $30,000 cost. Selectman Imke, do you have any comments or questions?
No, it's just, thank you for the breakdown. Yeah, my 2 points of interest primarily were to know the status of, make sure that people who requested were allocated ARPA money, that it was being spent. And then secondly, knowing the balance, which is a little over 58,000, looks like, what the process will be for us to allocate the remaining funds. And it sounds like we'll be hearing new requests, not just going back to the list of requests we received already. Is that right?
I didn't hear the last part of that question, Selectman Imke.
Oh, sorry. So as far as looking how to allocate the remaining balance of ARPA, I assume will be the list of requests that were already submitted are possibilities, but it sounds like we'll be hearing additional requests too. Is that right?
I have not put any thought, and I'm open to whatever the board's, interest and will is here, into that remaining funds. I think that what was kind of on my mind was I knew that we had the consultant thought process as it related to solar panels on the old dump, and it was a gentleman I ran into at a, political event, and it seems like a presentation worth hearing about how 30,000 can turn into millions of income. That would be definitely a good return on investment. And, but no, we can schedule a time to review kind of how to expend the remaining funds, or, we can save it for the next chair.
And I don't know if we know this, but what's the feeling for when we need to make a decision on the remaining funds in order to have them spent in time? I don't want to lose money, basically.
Yeah, we have to commit the funds by the end of this
year.
this
December,
calendar year. Yep.
This year.
Yep.
Just
So-
commit them.
and
They
then-
don't have, okay.
And they have to be expended by the end of the calendar year
2026?
26, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And just-
But it's in our better interest, because of conversations in Congress, to commit
Yeah.
and expend as soon as possible. I'm sorry.
Have him under contract. That's the letter I wrote,
term?
obligation. But they're defining that as under contract, or that's the proposed rule that they accepted public comment on, changing that.
Under contract by 26.
Under contract by 24.
Yeah, by the end of this year.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I feel, Renee, very confident that we will spend $58,000. So I don't think there's any possible way that we're going to let that money go back to the Treasury. Any other comments from the board or questions?
Nope, could all see it in one place? In one document?
Sure.
Well, thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. And then you have another request, approval for a chair to sign something.
This is on behalf of the Historical Commission. This is the grant that was an article at the annual town meeting for the town's matching share for $25,000. This is the project that has been underway for, I think, 25 years. It's been a long time.
What is it again, surveying?
Yes, for surveying of properties.
Okay.
You want to read the narrative, or are we, okay? Want to remind you of the narrative?
And there's a letter in the Google Drive, too, that
Okay.
was part of the annual town meeting.
I'll briefly read it, it's not too long. The narrative for the funds is: the proposed project revives the long dormant goal of surveying historic and potentially historic homes, buildings, parks, and areas in town, originally begun with volunteer staff in 1998. In addition to the original goal of surveying Kilburn map houses, other sites for inclusion will be 2 burial grounds, one of which is a recent discovery, a military training ground for the town's militia in 1775, and a park constructed under the WPA in the 1930s, having a potentially historic underground stone structure built with assistance of townspeople. The original Kilburn map mentioned is included in a volume published by the Lunenburg Historical Society entitled Lunenburg, The Heritage of Turkey Hills, which received wide distribution to members of the society and the community. The original copper plate from which the map was printed remains intact at the Society's museum. The local planning board has designated updating the master plan as a priority. The new master plan will be used as a guide for the town of Lunenburg in areas of land use, economic development, housing, transportation, community services, and capital facilities planning, among others. The inclusion of these additional surveys added to the MACRIS inventory, they're using a lot of acronyms here, clearly written by someone who was in the military, will be beneficial to the town's planning efforts. The Historical Commission is communicating with other commissions and committees to gain support for the town to adopt the provisions of the Community Preservation Act, thereby lessening cost burdens such as the current upgrading of municipal buildings and the expenses of the recent demolition of a historical school building. If applicable, a 3-ring binder containing a large quantity of drafts of Form Bs will be available to a consultant, as well as a CD and other documents created by William Bingham, a local civil engineer who spent untold hours as a volunteer in the previous survey attempt.
Where was that? That wasn't in our Google Drive, was it?
No.
No.
Okay, all right. I was like, okay, I thought maybe I missed something, but I did miss something, okay.
No, it's
The original letter.
yes, I have it here. So the request is, they're applying for a grant. The request is to give me permission to sign this.
I make a motion that we approve the request for the chair to sign the Historical Commission grant application for surveys and planning.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Roll call vote. Selectman Imke?
Aye.
Selectman Alonso?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
And an aye for myself. All right.
And there's 3 other,
I have to sign this 3 times?
there's 3 other forms.
You guys okay doing the dates?
You can put in today's date.
All right, next on our agenda, we have minutes, warrants, and action items. Let's go to action items. Any action items for the town manager?
I just have one. I've had conversations with the town manager about these, so we should, now that we have somebody going over the new town website, this board should come up with documents that should be on there. And it came to light that like some of the basic documents have never been on our website, like the updated budget, the, capital plan, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So we should have a framework that the person organizing the website makes sure that make sure we have the latest documents on there.
I concur. So you have that request noted from Mr. Alonso. Any other action items?
Is that an action from me or the board?
Well, the board should probably put together a list of items, probably individually, and then we'll collate them and then submit them, so we, and then put it out to the public and see what else should be on there. So it's really not a town manager item, it's really an our item.
Just as commentary to that, like I know the board's well aware that we've been short-staffed, so that has indicated a lot more responsibilities on me, even down to the point where there is no permanent department head. Now I become the next in line for employees, for a resource.
For what department head?
Finance.
Oh, the ones that you know about, okay, yeah. Right.
More heavily involved in assessors, land use.
Right, and so while I understand that, I mean, what I'm talking about is a framework. We should know what should be on there. Whether or not it can get on there in a timely fashion because of employment vacancies, I understand. But like, we don't even have a list of these should be on there. That's what I'm saying. So really, kind of this should be driven by us initially, but it should be handed over to the person doing the website to say, okay, these are the ones, where am I going to put them? And then who do I get them from? And it's actually kind of amazing that some of these weren't, for years haven't been on there. So it's not like, oh my God, they have been for years and now they're not now. They never have been, but they should be because, again, people look to them to download documents, that's all.
I'll add your request to the agenda. I'll look at the calendar to see when. I can also work on that proposed, kind of start off the conversation with some kind of document.
Well, I mean, I'll try it too. I mean, everybody, if the four of us and
Yeah.
if Caesar listens to this, before, I mean, it would take all of us 15 minutes to come out and just come up with a list of what things,
Yeah.
from a financial document point of view, that people in the town should have access to just from the website, that's all.
I agree. All right. Seeing no opposition, yeah, we'll add that to the agenda, and I'll just see if it makes sense for next week or in first week.
Whatever. And no, it is not a town manager, item, because I think the town manager certainly has enough stuff to do.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily a town manager item, but I think it would be helpful. I know that when Kara was working on the website, I think sometimes getting a comparison of what other communities do is helpful, like especially in the region. Looking at what Shirley has on theirs, looking at what Townsend has on theirs, even though I know that probably was done, but sometimes like getting into that nitty gritty and having that as if we have a website manager, just if that was part of a routine check, it certainly, I believe in best business practices, and it helps identify, hey, maybe we can do this better. So I do think it's something that staff may want to figure out how to follow up on that, so that way, it happens organically, but in the same tone. I heard everything the town manager said. I don't expect Heather at all to do any of that. And, when staffing permits and we have the personnel, then that would be a good thing for personnel to do. And I know if things come forward from department heads and
Yep.
when they want things on the website.
No, and Kara reaches out to departments to get information as well. And she's worked with, I think I gave this as part of one of my updates, even before the assessors had asked for this, and after my meeting with DOR, I asked her to review Melrose's, that's the best practice community, for what documents they had, and she did a whole comparison on what they had on their website versus ours, and she's been working with a member of the assessors to work on a compilation of documents to put up.
Okay. Any other action items for the town manager? All right, we don't have any minutes to approve yet, but, all right. And we know, any committee reports this evening?
I have none.
No. All right, any upcoming, our next meeting is scheduled for January 23rd. Do we have any upcoming vacations that are planned? And I ask this only because I would like to gauge everyone's thoughts on us adding them, if we have time off mutually in February, which I think we may, that we substitute a meeting in February for January.
I'm off the week of the 5th, so that whole 5th to the 9th, I am away.
All right.
Of February.
Okay.
I also have another week in March, but I don't know, I don't know off the top of my head the exact day. I'll let you know next week.
Okay, so we have that's going to be Tuesday, the 6th of February.
Yep.
Anyone else unavailable on Tuesday, the 6th of February? All right, I'll check in with Caesar. Do we have any opposition to scheduling a meeting on the 30th of January and not the 6th of February? Anyone?
It's fine with me.
Okay. I can do it. Okay, I'll check in with Caesar, see what his schedule is, and we'll add it next week. Okay, we'll have a decision by next week on that, but that would just be swapping, so that way we have a full meeting. Because I know that when we get through these policies and the handbook, that it's important for all of us to be here. And I really value your input, Tom. You come with a lot of experience. So.
Thank you.
Public comment. Do we have any public
Do we have warrants?
Oh, we do. As we're sitting here looking at the huge stack of warrants. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
I mean, I admire the final push there that you're trying to get through, but.
All right. So, I'm going to write in the same total that's there before I sign this. We have a warrant, accounts payable warrant, in the amount of $852,071.46. Thank you. We have a payroll warrant in the amount of $961,855.94. Thank you. This is the remaining accounts. Tom, can you double check the warrant number on the accounts payable?
3724.
Not 3624?
Nope, 3724.
I don't have anything to sign for this. It's 3624. Going to be another one, right?
Nope, I don't think so.
It's two different amounts.
This, it's 102, 202.
Got it, got it. We have an accounts payable warrant in the amount of $221,282.17. Thank you. Should probably put that on top of this.
Okay.
Stay together.
Here's date that. But I handed Bill Lasko complete.
Okay, all right.
That's the only thing missing. 60.
I only wrote it like so many times. I was making sure I put 24 too. If you want to, if you need me to re-sign something, I'll come in tomorrow and do it. If I messed anything up. Do we have any public comments this evening from the Town Manager.
I do have a public comment. I want to send our condolences to the Ruth family. Chris Ruth, his dad passed away this weekend, so our thoughts are with him and his family. And as well as we have some other staff members that are either personally experiencing some issues or through their family, and I want to also put them in our thoughts.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Any public comments this evening from the public? Seeing none. Any public comments from the board? Oh, no, we do have a public comment from the public. I think this is Rhonda. The caller online.
Hi, this is Rhonda Lucio from 181 Reservoir Road.
Hey, Rhonda, I'm getting used to your phone number, Rhonda. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Since there's a delay in getting the documents on the website, I was just curious, when the capital plan was presented, I'm wondering what was the last, we got the top 10, but I was wondering what's a little bit further down the list? Maybe like the next 4 or 5 items that could possibly be funded?
Everything's up on the website, Rhonda, under the...
Oh, it is?
Yes. All the documents are on the capital planning committee page.
I thought this was I went to capital planning meetings and watched them all, but the town manager's plan is usually slightly different.
Correct, and my presentation is up on the website as well, under capital planning.
Oh, it is? Okay, excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Lizio.
And it clearly shows the town manager's ranking versus the committee's ranking, too.
Okay, thanks. Great.
Thank you, Ms. Lizio, and Happy
Have a
New
good
Year.
night.
Thank you, you too.
Bye.
All right. Any other public comments from the public? Seeing none. Public comments from the board?
None for me.
None.
All right, seeing none, I want to thank Mr. Ezekiel Ayala for joining us for the full meeting tonight. It's probably a good experience to see how these go. And I know this one is long, and we do sometimes have long ones.
This is not doing your flu very well there.
I was going to say, is it a good experience?
Yeah, I think it's healthy for employees to watch kind of how this board functions. I think you get a good feel for the town as far as our style and how we interact with the town manager. And
I appreciate the initiative.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you. I appreciate, coming aboard.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So I want to thank everyone at home for joining with us tonight. As we noted from some of the topics, we are going to have some follow-up. We will be reaching out to members of the board as soon as we hear from Open Space and Capital Planning. I know it's winter, but I know they want us to vote on their request while the warrant is open. And so if we can kind of consolidate our schedules, it sounds like we're going to need to target somewhere around mid-February when everyone is back or later to be able to do a site walk. Nonetheless, I think we had a really productive meeting tonight. It was good to hear from residents. When I ran down to hit the restroom, a couple of residents commented that they felt as if it was an inviting atmosphere for them this evening, which is always good to hear when residents have concerns. And I think my fellow colleagues on this board always do a great job, in my view, of being open and receptive to the comments from the public. And I think it's always on the forefront of everyone's mind of who we work for.
And nothing says boating like mid-February. That's what I say.
All right, and so is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any additional discussion? Roll call vote. Selectman Imke?
Aye.
Selectman Alonso?
Aye.
Selectman Franco?
Aye.
And an aye for myself. The time is 10:28. We hit the 10:30 cutoff. 10:28, we are adjourned. To those at home, have a wonderful evening. We will be here again next week, the 23rd, and we will discuss next week if we will be meeting on January 30th instead of February 6th. Please stay safe, stay warm, and have a wonderful night.